Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Mayor Knutson?
Here.
District 1 Morissette?
Here.
District 2 Brokaw? Here. District 3 Bernard?
Here.
District 4 Wyland?
Here.
District 5 O'Malley?
Here.
District 6 Burchell?
Here.
At this time, we take comments and suggestions from citizens present. Any citizen who would like to speak to the council and be heard on an issue that isn't on our agenda tonight but could come before the council may speak now. Is there anyone here that'd like to be heard? We'll move on to item number 4, consent agenda items. I've had a request already, Nancy, to remove the item about the reduced speed at Rivercrest, which is number DC.
Okay.
So let's take that off. Would you read the items?
To approve the public hearing and regular meeting minutes of June 16th, 2008. To approve claims for payment in the amount of $824,834.27.
I'd like to take that off, please.
Yeah.
To approve the request to barricade 3rd Street between St. Croix Street and River Street for a block party on Tuesday, August 5th, 2008 from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. To approve the request to barricade Liberty Street between Summer Street and Girard Street for a block party on Saturday, July 12th, 2008 from mid-afternoon to 9 p.m.
Could you pull that one, please?
To approve the Ragnar Relay Foot Race on Friday and Saturday, August 22nd and 23rd, 2008. To approve painting a crosswalk on the north and east side of the 17th Street and Laurel Avenue intersection, and stop sign line markings painted on all 4 stop signs at the intersection. To place on file the reports of the St. Croix EMS chief and the Parks Department and the Community Access Board minutes of June 24th, 2008. That is all.
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Roll call vote.
Morissette?
Yes.
O'Malley? Wyland?
Yes.
Burchell?
Yes.
Bernard?
Yes.
Brokaw? Yes.
Consent agenda items are approved. Let's move on to item number, let's see, claims would be next. At the Finance Committee, due to time being short, we didn't get to discussion of the claims. But Mr. Burchell had some comments or questions. Would you like to bring those out now?
I'd like to move to approve the claims, all but the bonus true bills, and that we have. And I don't know, if Nancy, if you have a number less the bonus true bills for the dollar amount.
Not handy.
Okay.
We just approved all the claims excepting that one. And do it that way.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
So Mr. Burchell's made a motion to approve the claims with the exception of the bonus true claims. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion?
What is your intent to do with the bonus true claims?
I'd like to go through that either tonight. We can go through it if you want to go through each individual bill. I have some questions on each of the bills. If we can do it tonight, or we can meet afterwards or next week and go through them, and then bring back to finance on next week.
Any further?
You might as well, let's do it today, tomorrow, whatever, before the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Claims are approved with that exception. Item number 3 is applications for operators licenses. The recommendation from, what did I skip?
Didn't you remove another one?
Yeah,
from the-
number 3, Mr. Mayor, they have pulled their, they do not
On the other
want to
side.
have that take place. So I don't want to waste any time. with
Well,
staff.
here.
Okay, so it's not on the consent agenda, so do you want to take it up now at the beginning of the meeting, or take it up with the
Whatever you,
Let's take it up with public safety, and operators licenses. The recommendation from finance was to approve the operator's license applications with one exception. The list was provided in a staff recommendation. The exception was that application submitted by Timothy S. Warnken, 814 First Street, Hudson, as recommended by the police chief and the city attorney. You've got the application and the response by staff in your packet. And the staff recommendation was to approve all the other operators' licenses. What's your pleasure? We have a motion.
recuse myself.
We have a motion to approve, and we have a recusal by Mr. Morissette. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The operator's licenses are approved with the exception of the denial of Timothy S. Warnken. Number 4 on the finance agenda. Well, let me explain what we did here in finance. We've got items number 4 through 12 on our agenda tonight deal with public works projects, either repair projects, mill and overlay projects, sidewalk projects, many of which have been bonded for or budgeted for. We went through these in some depth in the finance committee. Some are relatively straightforward. In some cases, we've made a recommendation, and I think the simplest way is probably for Betty. Betty still with us? Betty, be on hand, if you will, to explain some of this. Let's if you'll indulge me in taking this a little bit out of order as we did in finance, I think it might make a little bit more sense. Is that okay with you? So why don't you walk us through items number 5, 8, 9, and 7 to begin with, and I think we'll take action on those first. So could you discuss those items?
We have had the Hanley Road pathway in the budget for the last 2 years. I think it actually was 2006, 2007, and now 2008. We had originally had $40,000 of bond funds and $14,000 that we had in a deposit from Jacobs Holdings to complete that. It gave us funding of $54,000. We had a recent bid from Tower Asphalt. I believe it was $40,032.50 was the low bidder. With that bid and projected amounts that we have for engineering, we will have sufficient funds to do this. And so recommendation by the Finance Committee was to award this bid.
For number 5, for the Hanley Road project.
Correct.
Recommendation from finance was to award the bid to the low bidder.
Is that
Which-
last month?
Tower asphalt.
Tower. Yep, 40,000.
There it is. Low bid on this project came from Tower Asphalt Incorporated with a bid of $40,000, $32.50. $40,032.50. And that amount is somewhat less than what our staff and engineering estimate was. We bonded for that. What's your pleasure on number 5?
So move for approval.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a
Second.
second? And a second? Discussion?
How long has this, excuse me,
Go ahead.
Betty, how long has this been funded for through the bond? 2 years?
It's been, I believe we actually set the funds aside in 2006 for this.
Okay. And this could be used elsewhere if need be? No?
Could be
Could be?
the 14,000 could not be. The 14,000 was a deposit that was given to us from Jacobs Holdings.
Okay. Which leads me to the question of number 4 in the mill and overlay question.
Mhm.
And what finance was going to do with that.
And that's a good question. If you would like to postpone this number 5, what I was trying to do was work you through what I thought were going to be the simpler, more straightforward ones, and then take a bundle of a few of these together at the end and give you our recommendation. If you'd like to postpone this
The
until
question-
we have that discussion, we could do that.
Unless I can get an answer for the question of whether those funds could be used, and I couldn't quite hear what you folks talked about on the 11th Street mill and overlay.
And the recommendation was to postpone the 11th Street mill and overlay entirely until next year, and to do $50,000 worth of, or up to $50,000 worth of the sidewalk, curb and gutter projects. That would include a small amount of mill and overlay on, what is it, Redwood? Redwood Drive. So that was our recommendation.
Could I ask Tom a question, or?
Go ahead.
Is 11th to Wisconsin Street, from Cooley to Wisconsin Street, will that last another year? It's just about as bad as Crestview. I'm not saying it is, but.
And we talked about that, just as the amount of traffic is such that Crestview probably should have a priority. I mean, if you're weighing things out, you gotta go somewhere, I recommend definitely do Crestview.
Over Hanley? This is not a question about Crestview, this is a question about
Oh,
this
it's about
Hanley
the
pathway.
I think where you're,
Excuse me.
go ahead.
I have had concerns about some handicapped people that live in, Hanley senior apartments, and they travel from the apartments and they go up Hanley Road, and then they try to get to Menards and County Market through that way, and they even go up to McDonald's. We did some, patching just to try to help them out last week. But, there is a concern with some of the people, they drive those little scooters or whatever.
So this would help those folks?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. My question's answered.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the low bid on number 5. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Betty, next, number 8.
Number 8, lakefront irrigation. We have a bid on that from Advanced Irrigation, low bidder of $34,900. Our total amount that we bonded for in 2008 is $175,000. This is just a portion of that. The other is the finishing off of Phase 3 of the lakefront. And so within that budget, both of those will fall within it and still have excess funds. So Finance Committee recommended that we award it to Advance for $34,900.
Move to approve?
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion on this one? Again, this is low bid $34,900 is less than what the staff estimate was. It'll let us finish Lakefront Park Improvement Phase 3 for less than the $175,000 that we had budgeted back in April. Any questions or discussion?
I'd like to make one clarification on the issue sheet. It talks about Prospect Park in the issue, which is what confused me during finance, because this is about Lakefront Park, not Prospect.
It is, that's an error.
Question? Call the question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Number 9.
Number 9 is for streetlight replacement project. We have a low bidder from TAPCO at $52,825.20. This is for the streetlight poles, the truss arms, and luminaries. We also have another quote or bid from B&B, I think, was to complete this project for $24,720. The total project will come in around $79,500. We have bond proceeds of $90,000 to cover this, so the staff, or the recommendation from Finance Committee was to award this bid to TAPCO. We'd have $10,500 remaining of bond proceeds that could be used elsewhere.
Move to approve both expenditures.
Second?
And this is because these our poles are having trouble with their corroding? Is that being
They're
replaced?
rusting, they're steel poles that are old that are rusting from the inside. They look fine on the outside until they fall down. And we've had some near misses with that. These poles are aluminum.
We have a motion and a second to approve the low bid from TAPCO, $52,825.20, and to have the installation done by B&B Electric for $24,719.75. Any questions?
Where's the remaining bond go?
That will be probably utilized towards the other funds that we don't have enough funding for. One of the proposals or the options are utilizing those funds on as we get down the list here.
Okay.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Number 7, Prospect Park. What happened here was Finance Committee discussed this and questioned the urgency for it. Even if we did the grading now, seeding probably wouldn't happen in the heat of the summer. And we decided to, well, it'll be back on the finance agenda next time, so that we have no recommendation. And the thought was to leave the funding there, but to have some more discussion about this. That brings us to the roofing projects, Betty. Number 11.
The roofing quotes had been given to the Finance Committee, I believe, or Public Works at the last meeting. Public Works forwarded it to Finance to make sure that there was sufficient funds to cover these quotes. There is sufficient funds. We're looking at doing the fire roof, the City Hall roof, and the municipal building roof. Along with the City Hall roof, we're looking at maintaining and fixing the windows, so it comes about $4,300, I think, and then we're going to take those funds from the repairs budget and the remaining funds from the proceeds of the bonds that we had issued for the repair of all these roofs. There was the question of, we had one quote that would cover 2 bids that brought us over the $30,000 mark. Tom had explained that that was a good quote, because they are a certain type of roof that he could only get one vendor that really could do them. And he got quotes from other vendors that were almost double the price. So Finance Committee recommended to go with the quotes, even though they were over $30,000. So with that, it would be $19,166 for municipal building with North Central, I believe is the name. $15,661 for the fire roof with North Central. And the roofing center for the City Hall roof, I don't have that bid in front of me. City Hall roof is at $18,915. So with those, we have sufficient funds, and then $4,300 to be covered with repairs. So with that, the committee recommended the approval of all those.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the roof repairs and the window repairs on City Hall, the fire roof, and the municipal building roof. Any questions, discussion? Yes.
Just to put everybody on notice that this does take the repairs fund for public works, so don't let anything else break.
We gotta keep what we have together.
Yeah, exactly.
Does Parks have their own fix-it fund?
Not that I know of, I don't know.
Okay. So we just heard of something else that broke.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. With that, then, let's go on to oil burning furnaces if we can. And that's number 12. And Betty gave you this sheet. And it was on the table tonight. Does everybody have this one? It's 3 pages, and we're looking at number 3 on this one. Page number 3.
Option 12, or number 12.
The recommendation from Finance Committee on this was to do both garages, option 2.
Correct.
Yes.
With that, we needed funding of $32,000. To supplement the funding, we would go from the street light replacement, we had $10,500 from there. Band shell roof, we have approximately $1,900 there. And we decided that we would not do the beach pathway this year, and that would relieve $23,000. That would give us sufficient funds to complete the furnaces at both garages.
Move to approve option number 2 of doing both furnaces for $35,378.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve doing both garages and both furnaces for both garages. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Who decided, which beach path are you talking about? And who decided not to pay was that phase 3? Did we do that?
This one has to do with the present beach house. There's a pathway that was, sometimes the washout was there, and Tom can explain what they were thinking of doing about putting in drainage for it to keep the washout from happening. And it was the Finance Committee at the time that recommended that we leave that till next year, possibly look at it then. And they have temporarily fixed it, I believe, by supporting it with some more dirt and sand.
Is it safe?
Currently, we've dumped a lot of sand and things and kind of, raised the level of the sand up so it hasn't washed out for the last several weeks. We had a couple options of fixing the asphalt pathway and putting like an asphalt curbing there with a catch basin and divert the water into a storm pipe. Then we got talking about different options that maybe when they do another phase or whatever, another one would be just raise a retaining wall up in the other, some type of thing. It was kind of up in the air, so we just did this approach to make it safe for now. And there's things up in the air, so maybe we should hold off on that till we come up with a better idea.
And Mr. O'Malley, what is the exact savings that this will do for us?
Well, it's not my department, it's Parks, but it's $23,000.
No, not that, I mean the furnaces.
Oh, the furnaces. The furnaces at current 2007, well, they're not current anymore, but at 2007 prices, these furnaces will pay for themselves in somewhere between the 3rd and 4th winter. However, with today's headlines, that natural gas prices are expected to escalate by almost as much as 80%. We're looking at these furnaces paying for themselves in about a year and a half because the fuel for them costs nothing. It's waste oil.
So it's a good investment.
It's a very good investment.
Where are we at? Do we have a motion on this yet? Mm-hmm. We have a motion and a second to do option 2, both furnaces in both garages. Total expenditure of...
Is it the 32,150, Betty? Is that what the correct?
That's not the total expenditure.
Oh.
That's the funding that I needed. I believe the total expenditure is around $44,000.
Okay. And to pay for that using remainder funds from the streetlight replacement, which came in under what we bonded, the band shell roof, and by postponing and not doing the beach pathway repair this year. Any further questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. That leaves us with the big ones here, which is number 4 and number 6. Take it away, Betty.
Thanks. Okay, on page 2, basically, depending upon how the council would like to do this, there's the 3 options that I put together. If you would like to do Crestview completely from Hagan Street all the way up to Carmichael Street, or if you would like to do Crestview to Industrial Street, or not do Crestview at all. With option 1, if we do Crestview completely, from the amount that we bonded and the funds that are available, we're short $420,000. I proposed that we give Public Works what they need, the $50,000 to do the sidewalk project that they're looking at doing in that small mill and overlay that we had talked about earlier. And then the remaining $185,000 would be put towards this $420,000. The other remaining balance of $235,000 would come from fund balance. And as we talked about in earlier meetings, there was a one-time accounting adjustment for an accrual that the water department pays the city in lieu of taxes. To get on the same accrual year, we had to make a one-time fund balance or cash transfer of $280,000, which increased the fund balance of the general fund by that amount. What I'm suggesting at this time is that we utilize those funds and possibly reimburse it with a bond next year or financing next year. And that's why I say with a reimbursement resolution, it's a legal IRS requirement if we're going to pay ourselves back, that I would have to give a reimbursement resolution. It's an internal thing that I do. Doesn't mean we have to, but at least we cover that should we want to reimburse ourselves with bond proceeds next year. So with that, we come up with the $420,000 we need to do Crestview all the way from Carmichael to Hagan Street. If we decide not to do that, and if we just want to do it to industrial, we're short about $90,000. What I suggested then is that we utilize the mill and overlay budget, do everything that Tom has proposed, along with the sidewalk budget, and we'd still have $66,000 left over from that fund. Also, in the Public Works Fund, as the bond proceeds are in there idle, not being used for construction, they earn interest. I have approximately $77,000 in there. At this time, we'd utilize $23,000 of that. So we'd have enough funding to do Crestview to industrial. Or we can wait and do Crestview next year, save the $450,000, and bond for the amount that we think we need next year. So those are the 3 options that were proposed. Finance Committee chose option 1 for recommendation at this time.
I will so move that
Have
we
a
accept
motion-
option 1.
Motion to accept option 1, which includes mill and overlay for Crestview completely and funding sources.
I do have a
Is there a
question
second?
about my motion, though. This will call for, should we also at the same time authorize Betty to create the reimbursement resolution for us to vote on our next meeting? Isn't there a resolution that we'll have to pass?
It's required.
It's an internal one. You've given me authority. I've had it for 3 years, so I
Okay.
just create it and I put it in the file.
Good, then I'll just let the motion
And I'll
stand.
second.
All right, so we have a motion. Actually, he beat you to it
Oh, okay.
over here, so
Good.
we've got a second by Randy. Any discussion?
So you have taken the bonding funds from 11th Street Mill and Overlay,
Correct.
and we can do that next year, bond for it,
If you desire, yes.
we desire.
You would also need to approve the Monarch bid as well in that motion. You'd also need to approve the bid from
Oh,
Monarch.
right, okay, and I'm sorry, yes, I'll approve, and I'll amend the motion to approve the Monarch bid of $725,493.
I have one other question then. So this removes the mill and overlay and the curb and gutter on 11th Street, correct?
Correct.
All right. So then I would ask that a follow-up note be sent to the people on 11th Street notifying them that, to unnotify them,
Of their assessment?
of their assessment.
This also applies to all the sidewalks, correct? Because we've basically taken the sidewalk.
No.
Well, Tom, there's some that we're doing, right?
We'll do all the sidewalks.
Sidewalks, okay.
But because of, we made it more than a 20% change in the first bidding process, that I feel that we're gonna have to rebid everything again. The portions that we do, we'll have to rebid anyway.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions, discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. And I believe that takes care of item number 4 and 6. And that includes our entire finance agenda
Just about.
with Okay, now, no, it doesn't, because there were a number of items that we didn't get to in Finance Committee that we need to take up now. Without any objection, could we take up under old business, request from the Phipps to close First Street for commercial to Vine Street under old business number 8A, and that would save John Potter from wading through a bunch more things. Anyone object to that? No. Okay, John, you're up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of the Common Council. On Saturday, July 19, we will celebrate the 25th anniversary season of the Phipps Center with a concert at 6 p.m. in the band shell by the St. Croix Valley Community Band. Then at 7 at the west end of the dike, there will be a pageant that will process down the dike, across the bridge, through the Hudson Archway, and then back into the park, and there'll be a show immediately following in the band shell as soon as the pageant is concluded. When I spoke to you several months ago, I wasn't really sure if we were going to be talking about 25 participants or 250 participants. It looks like it's much, much closer to the larger number at this point in time. And I also wasn't sure about the size of the creature puppets that would be created. Well, we know for sure that one of them will be 14 feet high and 20 feet wide with a wingspan of 20 feet. So that, fortunately, the wingspan will be able to be condensed. They'll be able to flatten it out. But knowing this, because of the numbers, because of the size of the creatures, when we looked at keeping on the pathway of the park, it just doesn't seem possible any longer. It's such a sharp angle turn there that we are requesting to go out onto First Street from Walnut to Locust, then enter the park again at the corner of First and Locust. We'd only want the street blocked off for a minimal time. I would say that would be well under an hour. The Parks Department has agreed to do that and has done it for a much longer duration for the Minnesota Orchestra concert, and we would help out in any way possible to allow us to have access to First Street for that one block.
Chief Jensen, did you recommend approval of this?
Yes, sir, I did. We met with John, myself, Public Works, and the Parks Department, J.J. Barnes, and we discussed this situation. He wanted to block it off from Walnut to Locust Street, but because of the size of these puppets that are going to be going through there, that would make it difficult for other traffic to turn on Locust Street or on Walnut Street because of it. So what we're going to shut down is from Commercial Street to Vine Street, direct traffic up to 2nd Street. We would then block off Walnut Street and Locust Street at the alleyway so people can come down and get to the businesses. They can get into the Phipps lot if they have to, but they won't be able to go any farther. It would be an expense on my part if I had to put my officers out there. Mr. Barnes said that he would be able to use his park staff to man those checkpoints, and then he would take it out of his special contingency fund or special event fund that he has to cover the cost of those employees. They would put up barricades, and that would take care of the cost. I'm going to have probably extra personnel on just in the area in case there's any problems, but I don't foresee any going on at that time.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion?
Chief, was there any offer on the part of the Phipps to reimburse Parks for its expenses?
I said that if it came out of my budget, I'd have to be reimbursed, but not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
John wants to.
Okay. Thanks for that candor.
Any further discussion?
Can we make the motion contingent upon an offer?
Good idea.
Is that
friendly.
Amendment?
Yes, making an amendment.
Would
It's
you
friendly.
care to-
Is there a second to the amendment?
Oh, do we have a second to the motion?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, yeah. I'll second the amendment, if that's okay with you guys.
So the amendment then is to make this contingent on the FIPS reimbursing the cost of Parks Department staffing to demand the parade route. Am I correct? That's what your motion
Yes.
was? Any discussion on the amendment?
I do.
Yes.
I don't agree with it. I think the Phipps Center has done more than their fair share of bringing economic stimulus into this community, and I think this is a great plan, well thought out, and I think we could probably absorb the minimal cost of what that would cost. So I do not agree, and I do not accept the amendment.
I'd like to comment on that. Randy, I agree with absolutely everything you just said, except for that last phrase. I've been here for almost 2 hours, listening to finance and full council grapple with the very real problem of not enough money.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have enough money. And while the FIPS is an excellent corporate citizen, we simply can't be in the position of giving services to one nonprofit and not others. So we must treat everyone fairly, and we have charged for this in the past, and I feel we must maintain that policy.
Just so the council members are aware of it, I know John said this thing's gonna be about an hour. We're not gonna shut down that street until they're up near the arch, so I can't imagine this thing lasting any longer than maybe half an hour at the most. Just to make for consideration.
And by that, you're implying that the staff cost here may not be very large? Is that what your
It is a
point was?
possibility that they won't have to shut it down right away, so if Mr. Barnes can arrange his staffing to make sure that when people are out, that they're not working any longer than they have to, it might be a minimum amount.
So he might not have to tap into his special event contingency fund, which I wasn't aware of. Okay.
You brought it up, not me.
So Tom, do you have any idea how much it would be?
Just for, actually, we could change the schedule of the seasonal help or whatever, just to have them come in different times, so probably won't be any charge. I mean, we could just change the staffing time, so they're working during that time.
All right. Well, there's a amendment on the table that asks for whatever our costs are for staffing, manning the parade route, that we ask reimbursement from the FIPS. Any further discussion on that amendment?
You say that for all the other nonprofits, we do exactly the same thing?
Oh, we just did this recently with the boosters. We are not able to be in the position of giving things to one organization and not doing the same for others of the same ilk.
Understand, I was just looking for the example.
Yep, that was it. And I think the amendment can stand, because if there is no charge, there's no problem.
All right.
I don't accept the amendment as a point of clarification. I don't accept it.
Who?
So we're down to the original motion.
Well, no, wait a minute now. We'll vote on the amendment, Randy, and you can vote no on the amendment.
That's not the
Well,
way
I don't know, actually,
Robert's rules.
if the amendment has to be approved by the motion maker. That's been the practice. I don't
That's
know.
not my practice, and
Okay,
so
that's
it's
fine. I
we're not
don't
going to
know
do it
the-
that way.
I don't know the rules of procedure on that. Let me see if
Who
it's
made
on
the
my
motion?
little chart.
Lee.
I think
It doesn't
we-
matter. Once the motion's made, the motion belongs to the group. It's on the table. It no longer belongs to whoever made the motion. So it becomes a moot point. The whole thing of asking for friendly amendments is not in Robert's rules at all anywhere. So there's an amendment on the table. You've already spoken opposed to it. Pam, any comments?
Agree with the amendment?
Anyone else? All in favor of the amendment,
It
say
says
aye.
a second is necessary, which
Right.
we've had, so.
Correct. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed to the amendment, say no. Motion passes 5-1. The amendment has carried, so the motion now is to approve the request by the FIPS contingent on reimbursement of staff costs for manning the parade route. Any discussion on the amendment, on the amended motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion, was that a no?
No, I said aye because I want them to have the parade, but I think it's a travesty the way that was handled.
All right. Motion carries. You're welcome.
Council members?
Next item, then, we'll go back to Finance Committee, and we'll be at number 13 on the Finance Committee. This item is consider use of $2,000 from the Public Works Contingency Fund for repairs to the siren at Hanley O'Neill Road. Betty, comments about this?
This came before me because we didn't have enough money in the budget to cover this expense. I happen to be aware of, there was a lightning strike, I believe, out at the water department that we had turned into insurance, and this had related to it. In order to process the bill, I need to do the amendment to the budget so that I can process the bill, and we're going to submit this along with our other insurance claims. Not sure if it's going to get denied or if we have a $1,000 deductible on it. But if the money comes back, the money will go back into the budget as is. But for the processing of it right now and the possible non-funding of it, I need $2,000 from the contingency budget to pay for this.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the staff recommendation and a second by Mr. O'Malley. Is there any discussion?
Betty, would you discuss with the council the amount of money left in the Public Works Contingency Fund?
There was a $20,000 budget, and at this point, with this $2,000 gone, it'll be $18,000.
Thank you.
With
Any
the
further
possibili-
discussion?
Well, with the possibility that we're gonna get $1,000 back, right?
Yes.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. I skipped number 10. Number 10 was review and consider final draft of Parks and Public Works Director job description and consider advertising for the position. Finance Committee action was to send this item to both the Public Works Committee and to the Park Board for their review and recommendation, and to have that review done and recommendation back in time for it to go back on the next Finance Committee agenda. That brings us to number 14, consider entering into service contract for St. Croix EMS to accept payments via credit cards. Betty?
This is new for the EMS. We do accept credit card payments with our parking tickets, so it's not new to the city, but it is new to the EMS. What we're suggesting this time is that we go into a one-year contract and reassess it. We're not sure of the cost that's going to be associated with the collection of this, and if it's going to outweigh it because we collect sooner, therefore we pay the collection. We use LifeQuest to do all our collections, and will we pay them a less percentage, because if we collect within the first 30 days, we pay LifeQuest a smaller percentage than if they have to go after it when it gets old. So we're looking at there's a possible savings and a quicker collection. A lot of people like to get their rewards program and like to put their large bills on their credit cards. So we're not exactly sure of the cost that's going to be associated with this. We can put a service fee on it. Right now with our parking tickets, I believe it's a $2 service fee that if you're going to pay your parking ticket online with your credit card, it's going to charge you $2 more. We can do that. I haven't decided what would be a fair price at this time to put on an ambulance bill. I don't want to put a $25 charge on somebody that might want to put a $30 fee that they have remaining from their insurance company on. So I can't do percentages. I have to come with a flat fee. And at this point, I'm not really determined that that's what I want to do. Also, at the same time, we have to watch the EMS because they do have such large write-offs, and do we want to add another 2% to that write-off because we're charging, paying fees now. It's not a real good comfort zone to know exactly where we're going to come out. So what I'm doing right now is asking council for approval for me to seek into it a little bit more and probably go into a one-year contract and see how it turns out for the ambulance. The problem I have with this is that they're holding this open for us. It's a deadline that was July 2nd was the deadline to get this in. Came across my desk. I was questioning why they wanted all this information, and I found out why is because they were going into a credit card contract. So I brought it before the council to ask for the permission to proceed with it, probably for a one-year contract. And at this point, I probably would say without a service fee associated with it.
I have a couple of questions. Sorry. Today, all of our collections go to LifeQuest.
Correct.
Correct. Can we have anything that's paid by credit card in the first 30 days not go to LifeQuest? Because that would save us a lot of money up front and save us more than the 2%, I believe.
They're going to still do the billing for us. They're still going to bill the insurance company first and the patron second. So I don't know how we would pull those out saying, are you going to pay by credit card, and we'll bill you directly. So I don't think it's a negotiated item because they'll still have to go through the process of what they need to do at LifeQuest.
Alan, question?
Nope. Have they already, well, yes, have they already signed the contract?
No.
Okay.
Scott?
Would like to point out that in your packet with the American City and County Magazine on page 26 is an article exactly about this called Processing Options, which seems to be in favor of going to the credit card system. I will move that we do give Betty approval to engage a one-year contract for this system.
So we have a motion to approve, and we have a second by
I'll second that.
Lee. Any discussion?
Could you come back with the particulars? It kind of seems a lot of information missing.
I think it's because we don't have any experience, that there will be information missing for about a year to see exactly what it's going to end up costing us and if we are going to collect faster because we use it.
The nice thing about this, though, is somebody has a bill sitting out there, they're sitting there with their checkbook trying to decide, I feel like I need to pay this, but how do I pay it? And this does give them another option.
I have
Lori?
one other question. Do we allow people to pay in installments? I would assume so.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Other comments, questions? Ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Number 15, consider funding an engineering study for the 11th Street overpass and Hagan Street intersection. This item, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I can speak to this. We're looking at the 11th Street overpass. There was an issue that came to safety about the slip lane and the stop sign, which became more of a question of is it a stop sign or a yield sign? Then there was another question about with the amount of traffic that comes down that street and to that intersection and across the bridge, can we make that a 4-lane bridge to help move traffic quicker, solve the confusion at the stoplight there? Or what's a better configuration for that bridge and that intersection with all the traffic that's going all the different directions? So Public Safety wanted it looked at to say, is there a better configuration for that intersection, that overpass? Anything you want to add?
Okay, staff recommendation on this one was that the city has no funds available at this time in the budget, and to ask that this item be considered, or to recommend that this item be considered in the 2009 budget requests. And a further note that when the representative from the Department of Transportation was here, he indicated the state might have funds to help in this type of assessment. Maybe we should look into that. What's your pleasure here? Do we have any idea what it might cost? I haven't seen a cost estimate yet. I know all studies cost $10,000 these days. So would that be a safe guess?
I would think, I've seen them come across from 6,000 to 9,000 to 14,000 for traffic studies, depending upon what's done, what type of measurement is. Chuck would probably be able to tell you what it's going to cost.
Okay. Well, let's get a cost estimate and then, go ahead, Chuck.
I talked to our traffic engineers, Shelley Johnson, and he indicated it'd be more in like the $3,000-4,000 range.
Okay.
That does coincide with our most recent traffic studies in the past 2 years, they ranged around $3,500 to $4,500, done by BRA. We still don't have any money for it, but.
Well, understand this would have come from finance, where I suppose our job was to find a funding source. We didn't have time to take it up, so here we are. If we're gonna do it, we need to figure out how to pay for it. Or do you want to postpone it?
I move to postpone. We already have information from Betty that there is no funding for this.
I'd like to see you guys look into that grant
Yeah.
at the finance committee.
Okay, well, Scott moved to postpone.
I'll second.
And we have a second, and it's a good suggestion. We will look into whether there's state DOT money.
One other comment on that. I think he kind of implied that that stop sign should be changed to a yield sign. I don't know if anybody else read it that way, but
Yeah.
I read it that way.
has safety committee had, take a look at this yet? I know we're gonna wait some time and then come back and take a look at it. I can tell you, I go by that corner probably 4 to 5 times a day, and I would say 80% of the people don't stop. I counted 27 one day when I just sat and watched it, and I believe 4 stopped.
Well,
So,
we've also noticed that there hasn't been an accident since February. And in February, there was 2, and I think January, there was 1 or 2. So we'll look at it again, saying, yes, there may be some drawbacks to it, but if we're seeing safety increased, annoyance increased, but safety increased, we'll also take that into consideration. It comes up at, I believe, our next agenda. We'll be looking at it again.
Could you check at that time to see if there's correlation with ice, it being January and February, and then the accidents stop when spring happens?
Certainly.
good point.
The motion on the table is to postpone this, and with the suggestion that we look into state DOT funding. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And we'll postpone that. I believe number 3 under the Public Safety Committee was asked to be removed from the consent agenda. That's barricades requested for a block party on Liberty Street, July 12, 2008. Mr. Morissette?
That has been canceled.
That has been canceled. Requires no action on our part then. Would you like to be postponed further? You would? Okay. We aim to please. Let's move to unfinished business, update on projects. Chuck? Oh, I missed that one. Sorry.
Or might as well start with the triple left, Crestview triple left turn there. I did invite Pember to this meeting, and he was gonna try to make it when I talked to him last week, but today he indicated that he couldn't be in attendance. Where they're at with this is they originally had planned to get it done by July. That was the latest, July 4th. That was the latest version, I believe, at the last council meeting we discussed. How Pember explained it to me is this. They were going down a path that their supplier said, well, just cut off the base and reattach a new base. And so that's the way they were going forward. Well, at the 11th hour, the manufacturer of the sign, Spectrum, indicated that, no, if you do that, it's going to void the warranty. You have to use us to manufacture the adapter and do it the way we want, or there won't be a warranty on it. And so Pember's been going back and forth with Spectrum on this, and all the measurements have been provided to Spectrum. Spectrum will be manufacturing a sign base that matches the existing base. If you recall, that original sign bridge was manufactured last year, and the intent was to install a new sign base. But due to safety reasons for the general public, the contractor, as well as cost savings and just least disruptive to the public, it was decided this spring to modify that and test that existing sign base and go down that path. With that being said, what I'm suggesting, or what I'm looking for your consideration on is that Pember thinks, from an optimistic standpoint, they will have the dimensions of the adapter tomorrow. Then they'll schedule their boring to boring contractor to drill the hole to install the concrete sign base, and so that sign base should be installed, about a week from now. He doesn't have a set date from Spectrum as far as when that adapter is going to be delivered to them. He didn't think it would take more than a week. And what I'm suggesting tonight, and what I've talked to Pember about, is doing a change order, putting a time limit on him, that once he gets that adapter, he's got 1 week after receipt of that to have that sign bridge up and operational. And so that's what I'm suggesting, and if there's a consent of the council, I'll process that change order tomorrow.
Well, my understanding, Chuck, was they have to fabricate the base for that sign, and we don't have any estimate how long that's going to take. Is that correct?
Yeah, we don't. We've requested it. He's contacted Spectrum as I have it as well.
Wasn't the purpose of waiting this after the winter was to have this stuff done? Measured, fabricated, everything, and an engineering point should have been done when you said it was going to be done. This has been a screw-up since it started.
Well, in the spring, we did meet out there with the contractor, and up until that point, Pember's they're a good contractor. They've been very responsive and very cooperative for not only that triple F turn, but also the wall project as well. And so in the spring, we did meet out there. We talked about this. We were in agreement. At that time, they knew that the existing sign base had a different bolt configuration, and they just, they were just going to do that in-house. Once they came back and the testing was approved and it was a go. So they didn't want to.
Were you not pushing them to get that done faster?
Yes, I certainly was. I mean, there was some back and forth with how are we going to test that and some of those things. And when information or questions to our office, they were turned around, very quickly, within half a day. So from our end, we were responding as quickly and as efficiently as we could.
I just really think this has been poorly supervised by you and your outfit. And I think there needs to be.
Well, my point is that what's happened in the.
Hold on here,
Yep.
Alan. Are you finished, Randy?
I'm done with that comment.
All right, go ahead.
Well, the issue is, when's it going to get done? And we can fight about what happened in the past or argue about it, but what I'd like to know is if we can get a date set when it's going to be done. And that's what I really would like to see accomplished tonight, if we can. But again, in the future, we don't know when this is going to be done. It has been 7 months, maybe longer than that. It seems to me that whether we have to go over to Menominee and talk to Pember and find out when he can get this done, or we have to hire another contractor to have it done, we need to do something, because we continue month after month. I think it was going to be in before Memorial Day, and before that it was in June sometime, and now it's July. I just want a date, and I don't know if that's unreasonable or not, but.
Well, that's what I'm trying to accomplish with the change order. Give them a week after they receive it. And I've requested a schedule not only from Pember, but also Spectrum as far as getting.
So if they can't get it done in a week, are we having another plan to go out and hire someone else to get it done? I mean, if they can say we give them a week and they don't get it done, now what do we do? I think we need a backup plan where we say, we've got to hire somebody else to go get this done. And I don't know, is there a bond on this? Did they put a performance bond on this?
Yeah, we do have a
Obviously,
bond.
they haven't performed.
Yep. And there's, a date would establish liquidated damages, and there's that route. They do have the sign at their shop, and there isn't a warranty concern there as far as Spectrum saying, we have to manufacture this, and you have to hire a certain welder with specifications to do that. But, that's certainly.
So it
a
goes
route we
back
can
to,
go down.
Chuck, it goes back to when that was manufactured, why they didn't know there were 6 bolts on the bottom and not 8. I mean, that's where the problem came in, is when it was manufactured incorrectly,
It was manufactured for a new sign base.
okay?
So it was midsummer when the project was awarded.
Of last year?
Of last year, or late summer.
Yep.
The project was awarded, they got the shops in right away, we reviewed them right away, and then they ordered the time. But the lead time on that sign bridge was such that it wasn't delivered to Pember until the winter.
Yep.
And,
And I understand all that, but going forward again, in 1 week, if they don't have it done, what are we gonna do? Wait again, and then it's another month?
Didn't we as a council, though, decide to use the existing sign base?
Right.
We were given that opportunity
Right.
To save money,
Right.
but it also created the issue of the bolt pattern problem, the warranty problem, the adapter problem. I think these are the things that we didn't see coming out of that decision.
Well, one of the issues was where the base was, is we couldn't put the base there because there's existing utilities there. So it really wasn't an option. I mean, we had to do it that way, I think. I suppose we could have moved the utilities.
It was a little dip and tuck, we could have done it, but, if it would have hit storm sewer, it might have had a bigger hole in that intersection.
All right, Scott, go ahead.
I would caution against any discussion at this point about looking for damages or penalties, because there have been 3 major delays in this project, 2 of them of our own making, and our decisions. Number 1 was it was our problem not making the decision in time for the part to be manufactured before it was November. And that was too cold to install it. Then the second thing that changed everything was Mother Nature decided not to have spring until sometime just recently, and so we couldn't work on it then. And the third thing that happened was our decision. We didn't have, I don't know why, we didn't have, and it's not BRA's fault, we didn't have plans of where the heck that utility was, where that storm drain was. And when we dug and found where it was, well, we couldn't put in that new base, and we elected to use the existing base, which saves the city between $5,000 and $10,000. We gave Chuck the direction, that's the trade-off we like. We're gonna save thousands of dollars, it's gonna take us longer, okay. Now we're suddenly saying it's not okay, and I understand that my patience is worn thin on this just as everybody else's has, but most of these delays are of our own making, and I wouldn't start looking to assign blame to other people. I think Al's got a good point. We need to say to the folks involved, look, we're down to the 10-yard line. We gotta get across the goal line here within X number of days, or we just have to give the ball to somebody else. And I don't know that that's something we can do. That's not even on the agenda for tonight. But it's something we could discuss at our next meeting, at which time Chuck's going to come back with either success or failure on the part of our vendors. And I think we take the appropriate action at that time.
And just a couple more comments. If you want to blow, feel free to call me at my office, and, we can certainly go through that. Moving forward, though, I am in daily contact with Pember, also with Spectrum, and so if you want daily updates, I'll be happy to give them to any and all who want to be kept in the loop here.
Okay,
Just a real point clarification, this is on the updates of project, is it not mean it is on our agenda
Well,
to
I
take
think you
action
can
on it?
deal with how to deal with the situation. You're getting informed on what the status is and how to move it forward. That's the purpose of
Mhm.
updating and doing what needs to be done.
I think it needs to go out for bid in a week, if we can.
let me, okay.
I was just gonna make one
I want to
point.
let everyone speak.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna make one point. Is there anybody other than Spectrum who can make the adapter and will still be under warranty?
Spectrum has indicated that, no, if they're going to warranty it, they need to manufacture.
So I'm not sure going out for bid I'm not sure where that would go.
Well, we
What
need
we'd
to
be
do
bidding
something. I mean, it's ridiculous. You talk about safety, that's unsafe up there as it is.
Okay. I've expressed to Chuck, I don't know when that was, we sat Scott and I, and we were discussing another project, but I indicated to you, come and tell us that this is getting done, or we're probably going to be hearing from somebody else about it. You remember that discussion? I cannot express in any stronger terms that we're very dissatisfied with the way that this has gone. And I don't really accept the fact that we made a decision to go for the existing sign base, and in that was a known delay based on a bolt pattern difference. If that had been brought out and it was told to us that, you're building in months of delay in that would have been a different decision. I might be wrong, but I don't think that that was part of the data that's given to us as the policy body. We got to rely on the staff and our engineering firm to bring us that kind of pertinent information so that we can make a good decision. And Chuck, when it comes down to talking about the relationship between the city and our engineering firm, it isn't about just the price and the cost. It's a relationship thing, and we've got a long relationship. But all I can do is tell you that that relationship can move towards being stronger and move towards being weaker. And this is kind of moving us towards being weaker because if it's not the contractor's fault and it's not your fault, Scott's indicating it might be partly the council's fault. I question a little bit whether that's actually the case. Let's just get this done. I got a report today from Betty on what the cost of this whole thing is turning into. Our original total funding on this project was $290,000, $161. Paid to date, we've paid $178,836. To complete the project to the contractor is now, and this was before any more change orders or more delays, $232,668 plus engineering. So far, we've paid $49,289 of engineering on this. Betty put in an estimated to complete of, I believe that's your number, $10,000 estimated to complete, and that's a little bit of kind of plucking a number because we really don't know. But so at this point, we are estimating that engineering is going to be in the range of $60,000, plus some miscellaneous expenses that come up to about $3,300. So we're at $295,000 to get this project done. This doesn't seem like that complicated a project, and we want to have it done. So if it's a matter of let's do something that puts a time limit on, I think that's the minimum that we should do. But with that, I'll turn this back to the council.
Well, if I can.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, we all have a responsibility here. I have Bonus Row, Pember, and when we met on site, we talked about that sign base, and my assumption was that he was working on that sign base. That's part of his job to manufacture and take that care of that. And if he was misled by his supplier, that's unfortunate. Up until that point, again, we were getting very, very good cooperation out of Pember, and the urgency was such when we met on site there that I didn't feel there was a need to go through the expense of processing a change order for a date on that and have those discussions. But hindsight, that should have been done, and that's why we're doing it now.
Chuck,
How much is that change order going to cost us?
Well, just to change a date, it's an hour worth of admin time.
about a week ago, I asked for a copy of this contract, and I don't think I've got it yet. Did you forwarded that, or I just didn't see it?
I sent the front-end documents to you, not the specifications part of the
Okay.
contract manual, but you do have that.
All right. By email?
And the city has, a copy of the actual contract as well.
Jan would have that in her file.
Jan's got it?
Yep.
And realistically, to finish the thing is, we'll have a day of inspection for the sign base. There really isn't too much to watch once the sign bridge goes up. Just check on the traffic control, some of those things. So it won't be in the $10,000 range.
Yes, Lori.
This all started long before I was here, but You know, I think while it may feel good at this point to make some rash decision to change vendors, I don't think it's probably a wise move. But what I would like to see is some consideration for compensation on the part of our engineering firm. And I'm not going to throw a number out, but I think there needs to be some discussion along that line. It's not proceeded as the city expected or as we had planned. And so I will just put that out.
Yes, Scott.
And what I'm going to say takes nothing away from what Lori just mentioned, because I'm generally in agreement with that. I think this process has taught us why this has only been done once before in the entire state of Wisconsin. This is a virtually impossible kind of sign to work with. And we've found that out. I don't think we're going to do this again. And I agree with you, though, we should be talking to BRA about some adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the topic here is update on projects. Chuck started off with the triple turn lane. Anyone else have questions? Do we have anything else before he moves on to other projects?
Just
Yes.
Is that it? Or just,
It's up to you. What do you want to do?
you know, I don't have the answers. I'm not an engineer, you know, by all means, but
Well, the suggestion Chuck made was to seek a change order that would specify that it be done by date certain of
5 working days. upon
5
accepting
working
that. And
days.
then once I do have a schedule from Spectrum, you know, I could wait for a schedule from Spectrum on that, or I can process this, you know, ASAP.
give us a date.
Well, again, it's dependent upon the manufacturing by Spectrum. Optimistically, probably the 25th of July. Because that allows, if they get the dimensions for that adapter from Spectrum tomorrow, they can schedule their boring contractor. And so by the end of the week or early next week, they would get that sign base installed. Spectrum's, I'm just guessing, is going to need probably a week to manufacture this adapter. And then once they receive it, it's going to take a week for Pember to install it. They have to hire a certified welder, chop off the old one, install the new one, and then erect it.
So the point is, have we ordered the fabrication for that part yet?
They did, yes. We don't have a date on it, though.
Okay, but it has been ordered.
Yes.
Did anyone tell us a week? Or are you,
No, Pember tried to get it out of Spectrum, I did as well. And I haven't heard back yet.
so we don't really have an idea that it's a
No,
week?
I do
It
not.
could be longer than
But,
that.
you know, it's a 2-inch plate or what have you. I mean, it just can't be that sophisticated or complicated of an item. And, you know, they do hold the sign bridge. You know, so if you hire somebody else to install it, you'd have to purchase that sign bridge from Pember. Otherwise, order another one. That's going to take.
Well, I think my comment to you in general, Chuck, would be at this point, under promise and over deliver. What we're asking for is, we want performance, we want to have a date, we want to see it get done. So my advice would be, don't say a week unless you're really sure you can do a week. So if it needs to be 2 weeks, whatever. Was that your point?
Well, can we ask the question, how long will this take?
Well, yeah, and I was hoping to have it by now, but I don't.
Okay,
He already has asked the question.
okay, I missed that, I'm sorry.
Wait, Chuck, you've told us July 25th. I think that's the answer that Lori's looking for.
But I think that's also setting up
That's
an unexpected
yes.
realization for another failure unless we
Yeah.
actually know how long it's going to take to manufacture.
Because none of this is under any of our control. Manufacture of that plate.
Well, yeah.
Certainly give him the incentive to push it a little faster.
Yeah.
And so we process a change order, we'll have a deadline, you know, and then we can consider liquidated damages.
Do you need authorization from us? Do you need a vote from us to process that change order?
I think a consensus would be fine, but if you want to do it more formally, that's,
Any objection to doing that change order?
I mean, I think we have to give them a week.
You object to that, Randy?
I want to see the July 25th deadline, and then we
Alright.
move on from there.
All right. I'm going to take that as a motion that Randy would like to see us set a July 25th deadline
Process the change order included.
I'll second.
and include that in a change order. And Pam's making a second to that. Any discussion on that?
I think without a commitment from your subcontractor, you're setting up a date that could easily be a failure again. That the request should be a date based on what the subcontractor comes back with. Then we have a realistic date that we can hold people to who have committed to a delivery.
I'm not willing to offer more fees to us, fees and delays, you know, no.
Other discussion?
Let's
Scott?
say July 25th comes and goes and we do not have the replacement part. We've already purchased at a six-figure sum the sign mast. In order to keep it under warranty, we have to have the adapter manufactured by the sign mast manufacturer. It's not a question at that point of going to a third party and saying, here, make this adapter, because then you have no warranty. I don't think that's the
Right.
best way to treat our citizens' money. It's delayed. I understand that. We're not happy with that. But I don't think we have an option on July 25th to say, well, you know, Spectrum, it's out of your hands now. Thanks very much for the sign mast, and we're going to take it from here.
My God.
Well, my concern is Pembroke may not sign that change order. They will sign one that says 5 days upon receipt of the adapter.
All right. Any other discussion on the idea of change order with a date of July 25th? Alan?
Well, we're the customer here. And, you call up a manufacturer and say, I don't know how difficult that is to call them up and say, when could you get this done? I don't know if that's an unreasonable request to ask that.
No, and I've requested that.
And
I've
what's
asked
the
that.
answer?
They haven't gotten back to me.
Okay?
Any other questions?
I called them today.
Okay.
If there are no other questions, we've got a motion on the table.
You know, I'll certainly withdraw if somebody wants to come up with a better idea and a conclusion to this, but we need to hold some people accountable here. And it's not us, we're the customer.
Well, I think the two options, the recommendation from Chuck was to do a change order without a specific calendar date, but just that the part that's been ordered within 5 days after it arrives, that our contractor installs it. That was his advice.
I will make that motion.
Well, we've got a motion on the
I thought
table
he was-
already.
Well, draw it,
There's-
Lee, if you think that's what we're gonna get out of it.
I'll make the motion that
and
as soon as-
essentially, all you'd have to do is take the date out.
Yeah.
Fine.
I think you took the date out.
He took the date out.
It's just, this is,
All right.
The other piece that you could add to it would be, if you want to put some leverage on it, you can focus on the omissions and say, without the delivery within a reasonable amount of time, we will be looking seriously into, you can leverage it that way if you want to put some leverage on them to say, this is not just a point in a contract, this is something we will act on if this isn't delivered.
Well,
I'm not in agreeing to threats.
no.
Well, that's kind of what the date was too.
Okay. The motion was to have the date. I'll
drop the date.
You'd like to drop it, and the seconder was Pam, and are you wanting to drop it now too? So essentially, is there any objection to changing the motion? Now the motion is just Chuck's recommendation. That we do a change order, get it installed within 5 days receipt of the part that's been ordered. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. You got that one handled, Chuck. What other projects you got?
Well, one I'd like to mention is the Lakefront Park Phase 3 improvements. And we will be having a pre-construction meeting on that next week. And, there was a deadline, we wanted to get that one done quick as well. And the deadline on that is August 15th. And they're committed and they will make that deadline. But there may be reasons to soften that deadline and give them a little more time. And so that's something that I would like to work with staff on. With the understanding, we do have some major event happening in October. It's just this time of year, you know, it's hard to do seeding, sodding, and tree installation. That's tempered somewhat because we are having an irrigation installed kind of concurrently with that. But pushing that closer to doing it in August is much better than getting them to rush on it and doing it in July. So we'll have a pre-con next week, but you probably won't see any activity for until August.
And make that clear to me why. Rush into what?
Well, you have a greater chance of the seed and the sod taking and the trees living. The closer, you know, you do that to the fall, as far as the install goes. But second week in August is traditionally the best time to, you know, to install some of these the seed and sod. He'll get it done within the time frame stipulated in the contract, but there might be reasons, good reasons, to give him a little more time. I mean, he's committed and he knows the dates, he bid the dates, and I talked to him about the dates, and he's comfortable meeting those dates, but it may warrant a little bit further consideration. And if you want it done by August 15th, we'll get her done by August 15th.
But isn't this one of those scenarios like Prospect Park, if you plant it, it will die? I think that was our discussion earlier. Plant it later and it'll live longer.
Well, with the exception that Prospect Park is unirrigated and no real good way to provide irrigation of a large field that's seeded. And here we're going to put sod down with an in-ground automatic irrigation system. So that's a difference from the standpoint of growing grass.
True.
Private contractors lay sod all summer and with an irrigation system and succeed at it. I don't think that's an impossibility.
No.
You know, I'm just really reluctant to entertain any idea about slowing anything down at Lakefront Park. It just, because in general, things take longer than we ever expect, so.
I do like the idea of enforcing change requests, so each change request comes through the council to say this project is going to be changed, the change is this is how long it'll take, this is how much it costs, so we approve each and every one of those change requests. So that way we have control over the decision making of if there's a schedule change, what's the impact?
So is a consensus to stick with the dates then?
Yeah, that's mine.
All right.
I mean, when I came in April and learned that this might have to be delayed past this time of year, I was unhappy about that. But in hindsight, we waited for the first flood, and then we had second high water, and you know, in the end, it was probably a good thing that we decided to wait until after Booster Days. But now it's after Booster Days. This is another one of these projects. Chuck, I got to tell you, I mean, this project, and we talked about this briefly in finance, total expenditures on this project at this point now are $675,000. And this turned into a big project.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're looking at $140,000 worth of engineering on this one, too. And is this the same contractor? I mean, when you said there may be good reasons to give him time, we're talking the same contractor, coincidentally.
Well,
right?
No. The
talking
landscaping is going to be done by urban companies.
Okay.
So it's, Phase 3 is a totally separate deal.
You're not talking about any delay on completing Phase 1, 2, the wall part. Your only comment on delay was about the plantings in Phase 3? Okay.
Yeah, that's a nice segue into that project there. They were down there shaping it up, and Monarch has indicated that they want to pave that path end of this week or early next week. And then after the path is paved, then another subcontractor can come in and start doing those pavers along the water there.
Okay. What's your next project?
Other than that, I guess I can open it up. I don't know if there's any other projects you want me to talk specifically on.
Any questions for Chuck?
I have one utility map update.
Mm-hmm.
is that through, what company or what department authorized that? Is that the sewer department, or? I guess the question I have is, it's a $14,000 item, and we've paid about $4,500 so far. Is that you do that every year, or, I guess maybe that's a question for Betty, is this in our budget?
It's one of those things that should be done every year, I think, if we talk to Tom and Chuck, I think it's an annual expense to update our maps for the changes that we've had. However, we haven't done it for about 3 years, I think, Chuck, was it?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's why this came through. We based our budget on the prior year's budget, so it wasn't in the prior year's budget, so therefore it wasn't in this year's budget. And so normally sewer pays half because it is the mapping of the sewer, and the storm sewers pays the other half. So Public Works pays half and sewer pays half.
Thank you.
Any other questions about projects for Chuck? With that, thank you, Chuck. I think I skipped an item which was number 5 back under Public Safety Committee. I apologize for that. Number 5 was consider a walking path from Anderson Park to Hazel Crest Drive. Could we go back to that one? Came from Public Safety Committee. Lee?
Right. Actually, Randy brought this up. It's basically to lay out a walking path. Maybe want to
It's a
describe it.
crosswalk. It's
Yeah.
not it's an air walking path. It's just a painted crosswalk from Hazel Crest to Anderson Park. A block crosswalk.
And the recommendation from Public Safety was
To do it.
to paint a crosswalk on Montcroy Drive from Anderson Park to Hazel Crest Drive at the curb cut.
Move to approve.
A motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? Scott, was that a
No, I don't know.
discussion coming out?
No,
I
no.
thought you were taking a deep breath there for a minute. Okay.
Just taking a deep breath, I was thinking that is, since people play tennis there and kids play in that park, that is a good place for a crosswalk. That's all I was thinking.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. I think that takes care of public safety. Back to unfinished business.
Except for 7, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and we've been waiting. Are you ready to? Oh, you're here. There you go. And that worked out just about right. Okay. Item number 7 came from Public Safety. Lee, you want to introduce that item?
Sure. There's a request from the school district to reduce the speed limit around the school permanently from, I think it's 45 now, down to 35. Public Safety looked at it and said that a 24/7, 7-day-a-week, 365 days a year reduction in speed was not what we would like to see supported. We'd like to see something more strategic that says, let's slow traffic during the time in which there are, children present. And when the majority of the turning is happening, the majority of the traffic movements are happening. So our recommendation was to set it up from 7:30, I believe, from 7:30 to 9, thank you, 7:30 to 9:30 a.m. and 3 to 5 p.m. and use some visible way for them to know this is a safety zone, where if we just lowered the speed limit, there was some discussion about as you come into the zone, people sometimes recognize sign changes and other times don't, understanding that the police department can enforce, but with a flashy light system, there is a notification that something has changed in this zone. So we felt that the flashing lights used during this time period would slow traffic and increase safety around the school for the time in which the major traffic movements and safety was needed. That was our recommendation.
All right, we've got some representatives of the school district here. Would you like to make a presentation to us?
Sure, yes. Good evening. My name is Tim Erickson, and I'm from the Hudson School District. Appreciate your time, Mr. Mayor, council members, to hear us talk a little bit about a very important subject, and that is, of course, the safety of our students, our staff, our parents, and community members out and around Rivercrest Elementary School. Currently, the speeds around Rivercrest are 55 miles per hour on Cooley Trail and 45 miles per hour, and Angela has a map up there, 45 miles per hour on County Trunk Highway F and / Carmichael. As an example, if you look at our Holton Elementary School, we have a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit that's posted with a school zone that is reduced down to 15 miles per hour when children are present. And if you go and drive around both states, Wisconsin and Minnesota, you're going to see speeds from 15 to 25 miles per hour when children are present around school zones. So we feel asking for a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, a reduction down to that is very reasonable. Currently, we're working with 3 entities, yourselves, Troy Township, and the county. We did address Troy Township a couple of weeks ago. Their recommendation was to have the county write a letter on their behalf to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, asking them to look at the speeds, and they were in favor of a reduction. Our next step is tomorrow we meet with the County Transportation Committee. So with that, I'll let Angela speak. And we have one of our board members, Tom Holland, and Superintendent Mary Bowenega brought in here also. So I will let Angela take it from there.
Okay. Basically, as Tim laid out, there's 3 jurisdictions here. We have County Trunk F, which is 45 miles an hour, starting at Red Brick. I believe it's reduced roughly in where Red Brick connects, and is 45 miles all the way through till Vine Street. You have the town of Troy in this area, which they have jurisdiction up to Tower Road, and currently this is 55 in this area. So what the city's portion of the roadways that are adjacent and would be affected by this request is from Tower to Carmichael / County Road F and north. So the city's jurisdiction is in this portion. And as Tim and Lee had outlined, is what the original request would be, or is that where it turns from 4 lanes when you head south on Carmichael, where it goes from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes, appeared to be a logical, narrowing point and a logical point where the speed could be reduced to 35. It would remain 35 all the way to approximately 100 feet past the south property line, and then we were requesting 35 to Nordic Lane area. And so those are the areas we're looking at. Why we're requesting a reduction of speed, obviously, a traffic report was done in this area, and it did ask for safety measures such as bypass turn lanes at these areas, and we are accommodating that, so we are improving the safety in that respect. However, we do want to bring that a step further. Right now, the school is further out of the limits, so walkers, bikers are not encouraged, but with developments, fairly close to the school, obviously they can't prohibit people from walking or biking to the school. So we just want to address those safety concerns. We also, just in general, all bus traffic, I don't know if you recall this from previous conversations, but all bus traffic will enter and leave in this area, and all parent traffic will enter and leave in this area. Just to make sure we're all on the same page as far as where traffic patterns are going to be. Other than that, with keeping it a constant 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, you train the drivers to go 35. When you have variable, when they have to make a decision, or when school is present, or when children are present, or when lights are flashing, it gives it a little more leeway, for lack of better words, of how to define that. So training them on a set speed limit is preferred. And also with early and late starts, with, we have ball fields in this area that will be used at nights. We have the YMCA in this area that have, the campers over summer. That was just some of the considerations of, if you just set it from the 7:30 to 9:30, 3 to 5, you're just very restricted in those times, and you might not encompass all the traffic, concerns that might be in that area. So that's, I guess, what I would like to put out for discussion at this time. Yes?
Maybe this isn't the appropriate time. Is there
No,
anyone
go
else?
ahead.
And this is something we talked about at public safety, but I had a discussion with Tim Ramberg at the county. He's a highway commissioner, and the concern they have at the county is they're not really in agreement with lowering it to 35 and then having the city go back up to 45 as it currently stands north of Cooley Trail. Part of the reason public safety came up with this solution was, let's address the problem at the time it's occurring and not have a 24/7 round the year speed reduction when it's not warranted. And also that would help to address the issue of, okay, the county might go along with this more easily if we're to just have 35 during those block periods. Obviously, when the lights are flashing, that's when that speed limit applies. No one has to be looking at their watch, or the lights would be timed, they'd be programmed. As you mentioned, the buses are coming in off Cooley Trail, the parents are coming in off County Road F, but there are turn lanes. Can you talk at all about the configuration at the intersection of Cooley Trail and County Road F? How will that be different?
It actually won't be different.
It won't be.
Other than, you can't really see on this, other than they'll widen out this radius point to make this left movement actually the right turn movement, and the left, it'll make it a little wider in this area and make the turning movement a little more free-flowing instead of the sharp angle that it's at. But that is actually the only improvements at this intersection.
Right.
The turn lanes and bypass lanes will be added at the school's access points.
So part of our reasoning or rationale was we wanted to come up with a plan that the county would be fairly likely to go along with, because it's not just our decision.
Can I comment on, go ahead.
Well,
I'd like to comment,
go ahead.
springboard from Lori's comment. Generally, I agree with you. I think you have an excellent idea. Generally speaking, I think that traffic control is better if there are no moving parts, that it's just set. And I think probably Chief Jensen would agree with me on that. But I have to disagree with Angela that if you put a permanent 35 there, where on Cooley Trail you don't even know there's a school there because of the woods. Maybe in the wintertime when there are no leaves you might be able to see the school, but you can't now. And on County Road Ave, if you go from 55 to 35 permanently, we're not going to be, as Angela said, training them to go 35. I think we're going to be inviting them to think a bunch of chuckleheads put together a speed limit here that goes from down to 35 permanently and then back up to 45. And so I would agree, if the school will pay for it, to put flashing lights. First of all, the usual reduced speed ahead, and then the speed limit 35 when lights are flashing. Otherwise, it's the current 45. And I would say the whole object of this is traffic control, but safety of the students must be still paramount. The school, if it isn't thinking of putting a fence along County Road F, I don't think you need one along Cooley because you've got the woods and a deep ravine there. But if this, I would want to make this contingent upon the school putting a fence along their perimeter to keep students from going into County Road F. We're going to have a whole population of very young kids there that haven't been there up to now.
Angela, can you explain to me how the jurisdictions work? I mean, the entire parcel, you petitioned for annexation to the city, and so the entire parcel is now within the city, correct?
That's correct.
But do we have a road sharing agreement with Troy where one side is in the city and one side is in the town, and that's why the Troy's got jurisdiction over the Cooley Trail along there? Or help me understand how that's working.
Now, Denny, do you want to
Maybe Denny knows the answer
address
to that.
some of the, I can,
Well, essentially, the county trunk F was not annexed to the city, so still under county jurisdiction.
so,
So everything south of Cooley Trails in county jurisdiction on county trunk F. The city jurisdiction, there's an area on both sides of the road for about 200 feet east of F on Cooley Trail. That's in the city. All the rest of it's still in the town of Troy.
yep, so up to Tower. This portion is city.
So it'd be reasonable for the city to agree if town's going to go down to 35, the city agreed to the remainder of Cooley Trail at 35, so you're consistent. I would go along with that consistency. I think otherwise it's not a good move. But
the only reason I asked the question is, I mean, the whole issue of annexation of this parcel was somewhat problematic and controversial, as I'm sure you recall. And part of the concern there was just this, that you're going to create a thing where you've got all these different jurisdictions. If there's a problem, if one of, what Scott's got issues about, let's build a fence because you're worried about kids going out on the road, seems like a pretty valid concern. Whose problem is it? Well, it's our problem because the parcel in question is now in the city, yet we don't really have control over all the roads. It is complicated, but if there was sensible planning in the state of Wisconsin, there would have been one jurisdiction here, probably. So if Troy wants to be it and says, go to 35 all around there, I mean, to me, it's kind of a waste. I mean, all summer long, it seems like it's a waste.
Denny, let me go back on the history on Cooley Trail. Cooley Trail used to be County Trunk FF.
Yeah.
County said, we're not going to retain that ownership of it, and it went back to the town of Troy, and the city of Hudson agreed to take a portion of it because a portion of it was partly in the city of Hudson. So the city basically takes care of that section. Sometimes we'll just go and plow till we get to Tower Road because our plows are down. Town of Troy sometimes does. So there's cooperation between the two jurisdictions as far as being taken care of, as far as some plowing instances. But that's the reason it came up the way it did, was because the county turned over the jurisdiction, and the city agreed at that time to take over that when it was offered under that circumstance.
Denny, could I ask you to repeat something? Because you said something that is not made clear on the issue sheet. We do not have any jurisdiction on County Road F south of Cooley Trail.
That's correct.
So all we are talking about is 200 feet of Cooley Trail. That's the only thing that we have.
Well, no. Then what the school's asking for is the section north of the intersection of Cooley Trail and County Trunk F until you get to the split where the median exists and the road splits, what some people call Bull's Nose or whatever. But that's the jurisdiction of the school. They'd like the city to set at 35 miles an hour. That area, which is approximately 800 feet, I believe.
yeah,
So it's for southbound F, because you're not at the school unless you go south on F.
Well, you're exiting the speed limit. So where you set it on the right side or northbound, it's
The school exists south of Cooley Trail and County Road F.
correct.
And we have no jurisdiction on County Road F south of Cooley Trail.
That's correct.
So we're only talking about that part of which we have jurisdiction, which is 200 feet of Cooley Trail.
right.
Okay.
The important,
And turning north, they want to go north, go
Yep,
back
we're
to
looking
halfway
at-
across the dog track.
That's why I say it would have to be southbound, because if you're going northbound, you're away from the school. There are no school buses entering or leaving. There are no parents entering or leaving.
But you do have this intersection, so we were just pulling it through that intersection because that's the prime, as I said, the school buses come in here, so they will be making these turning movements at that intersection. So that's why we're looking to go past that intersection in that area.
There will be no stop sign at that intersection?
It will be remained as the current traffic control, which, you know, Cooley will have the stop, County Road F, Carmichael will be the through.
This is starting to look like it's getting closer to the chucklehead theory.
Well,
Why would we slow down traffic that's already past the school and moving away from the school?
Because we're making a logical transition point at the 4 lanes to 2 lanes. And so when you have consistency as far as reduction and reduction and increasing, we want it to be consistent. So people realize that at that point where it goes from 4 lanes to 2 lanes is where the break is, where the 35 to 45 break is. So it's consistent when they're traveling south and when they're traveling north. So they realize that, you know, it's ingrained in their head that it's consistent and it happens at that point.
Well, you don't know yet what the county's going to tell you to do on County Road F, though.
No, but what we do know is the county has said that they're not going to be interested in lowering it to 35 unless the city is interested in lowering it to 35 all the way to I-94.
Keeping it consistent.
And I just don't see why we would want to do that.
No,
We've got a
no.
major trunk arterial, we've got adequate pedestrian paths and safety along there that we've invested in. Part of the thing within our city traffic plan is to have certain major trunk arterials that move traffic along north, south, east, west in a fashion that gets people going. If you set a law that doesn't make any sense to people, they just break it. That's what's happening at the stop sign up there they aren't following it.
Thomas Jefferson wrote, "Though Congress may enact laws, if they go against the common sense of the people, they will not be obeyed." And that's the case. That would be the case here.
Which takes us back to our strategic solution that said, when this is here, it's different. Right now, things are different. The lights are flashing. You need to be aware that there are children present. And we can, set that timing so that we're targeting those areas and those times that there are safety issues that need to be addressed.
And can we address the issue of when children are present and what that looks like? Because I think some of us might be thinking about what EP Rock looks like when school is starting or what Willow River looks like. There are, from the traffic study, it said there were going to be 6 to 10 buses. Again, they'll be entering on Cooley Trail. So what you're looking at are parents turning off of County Road F in a turn lane. The school is well set back from County Road F. You're not talking about kids getting out of vehicles on the side of the road. You're not talking, it's a different, we have to get a mental picture of what that is. Children are present means parents are driving them into the parking lot, and the school is set how far back from County Road F?
And there also, there's that tunnel now to get them back and forth across
About 300 feet.
highway.
So that's why we came up with the solution we did. If someone has another idea,
I expressed a concern at the public safety meeting. If you sign it with children present, if you got activities at night, is that going to apply? Where if you go with the time period, which I agree with, then you set a very specific time upon which that speed limit applies.
I'm sorry, I misspoke when I said children are present. That was just my mindset at the time. Thank you.
But it's when lights are flashing.
But Denny brings up a very good point. Part of the presentation of the school board when they asked for annexation was that this property would constantly be in use by citizens of Hudson and the surrounding area. Use of the playground equipment, use of the grounds, use of the baseball diamond, that there would constantly be people coming and going. We have this from Ms. Engelbrandt herself, saying that that's how this property was to be used. Well, if that's the case, then we can forget about flashing lights when school's in session.
I totally disagree. You're not going to lower the speed limit for any car turning off of County Road F. Yeah. We're talking about high volume times. Let's use a little bit of logic. Cars turn off of that road all the time now at 45.
Have we had studies, or has the school had, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, studies saying what the most common sense thing? We have an engineer telling us one thing, a developer, and I haven't heard from Marty yet, and the reason I voted no was because it was a consistency question. What makes common sense? Are we justified in making those decisions just on a feeling, or am I?
A traffic study was completed at the very beginning of this process by Bonestro to look at the area. We were looking in general how vehicular and bus traffic were going to affect the surrounding roadways. With no sidewalks at all in this area, pedestrian traffic was not looked at, and was also, though we were not planning on, little to no pedestrian traffic at that time. And that's, but we
Chuck, can you answer his question about a traffic study? Chuck Schwartz.
I'd like to hear from Marty too, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I did talk to Shelley Johnson, traffic engineer who did the original study. And Shelley's been in contact, or Angela's been talking with Shelley as well. And I had Shelley review the recommendations of the safety committee, and he says he was supportive of that idea of what you're proposing, the flashing lights during those 2 periods of time. He said, don't let them change the speed limit, though, to 35 all the way to 94 for the reasons you guys already talked about, because people won't follow it, in his opinion. So,
as an engineer, but as a chief safety officer, what is your thought? Which is in complete contradiction, I'm assuming.
From my point of view, and I'm looking at this from the perspective of the drivers, and I see on a daily basis going to all these elementary schools, those parents drive like nuts in parking lots. Now we're going to have them on a 45-mile-an-hour zone, trying to turn in, trying to turn out. I apologize if I upset anybody, but it just makes sense to me. Reduce it down to 35, and if you keep it consistent, you're not going to have those problems. And the other thing you got to take into consideration, I know that the YMCA is not in our jurisdiction. However, during the summer times, there's a lot of traffic coming in all those roads, trying to cross to go south, or trying to cross to go northbound. There's got to be some consistency in there. 35 miles an hour is not that, it's a small section of roadway we're talking about. Now, obviously, we can vote that way, or you can vote that way and say, yeah, we're going to go 35 from our end to this end, and the county's going to say, no, that's not going to do us any good, and then the school's going to have to do something else. But just from my perspective, I think it's much easier to educate the public 35 miles an hour through here and here, and that's what it is. The flashing lights, and the school district obviously makes a good point too. They're going to have late starts. They're going to have early outs. How are you going to get the timing mechanism to work on those? And then the next thing is that because the property butts up to the roadway and it's in the city jurisdiction, I do have some enforcement availability out there. I can go out there and run radar on those streets. However, if I'm busy, is the county going to be out there running radar on a regular basis out there? Does the county sheriff's department have enough people to put out there?
Okay, to me, one thing you said, Angela, was that there are homes in relatively close proximity across Cooley Trail that we can't stop people from walking and biking. Well, any parent who loved their kids would not have them walking to this school. And if the idea is that you're going to make this pedestrian friendly by slowing down traffic, I don't think this is the way to start. We need to do pedestrian walkways that are off the road, a safe distance, and there's a whole list of things that we need to do to make this a pedestrian friendly school. As it is, every student that comes to the school is going to come by internal combustion engine. Any parent that sends them any other way is nuts. And that's just how it is. So to me, this is all about cars. We're talking about cars, and I don't necessarily think you have to have everything slow down to 35 miles an hour for cars.
Mr. Mayor, we've had quite a bit of discussion. I'd like to make a motion at this
Good.
time. And I'll preface my motion by saying I think our discussion has been colored by the fact that this has been very poorly explained by the parties involved. And that is why we are groping the way we are. I think I've been wondering what is the root of that problem, and here's what I believe it is, and I will make my motion now. I move that you come back to us with a coherent plan, rather than asking us to solve your problem, of exactly how you envision this working, what you're prepared to do to protect students and to manage traffic, and let us review that plan. You do not have a plan at this time other than asking us to put up some signs. And we need a plan from you that we can get our arms around. I would ask you to come back and do that. That's my motion. The motion is that we postpone this until you return with a coherent plan.
All right, so we have a motion to postpone the item and ask for it to be restudied and returned to us. Is there a second?
Can you bullet point? I'll second it if you bullet point out the missing items that you would like them to come back
Sure.
and clarify.
Current traffic study. That is a study for the anticipated traffic and the plan for moving the buses and the cars. For instance, how are you going to guarantee the parents are going to come in one entrance and only that entrance? We don't know. They just are saying this. We need a coherent study done by whoever they choose to say, this is what the traffic flow is going to be once we open the doors for school. Here are the peak hours, here's what we think is going to happen, and here is the affected area of the roadways over which we have control that we can discuss.
And the piece I heard missing was, if there's a dramatic increase in pedestrian traffic, where are the walkways going to go in, where are the crosswalks going to go, how does the tunnel get involved, is there a fence question? Those are some of the other questions I heard, which is, what other precautions are there for the safety of the children?
I totally agree.
There's one more piece. I don't want to add this to your motion. I'll wait.
That's okay.
The county has to weigh in on this, and you guys are meeting with them tomorrow.
That's why we've got the cart before the horse here, because I asked earlier, you're not going to hear from the county until tomorrow.
The county wants to know what we're going to do. I can tell you that.
Okay. So they've already said that. They want to see what we're going to do first.
Well, I mean, in a private conversation.
All right. Your motion was to postpone, and now we've got a bunch of other stuff. Would you read back the motion as you understand it?
Postpone until the school comes back with a coherent plan, including bullet points about what's missing from the safety aspect.
And I think you have the gist of what we're looking for.
All right, and will you second that motion, Lee, as she read it?
We still have the
I'm not sure we've got a motion yet, Scott.
I guess I was back to the original question that we did put together a proposal which the safety committee feels is a reasonable proposal, but it also doesn't include some of the other issues that have been brought up. By taking that proposal to the county, then there can be a discussion at the county.
Well, and I agree with that. I mean, one of the things that I think I see happening here is that we made kind of a special deal with the school district, we meaning the city, which was that, right?
I don't know about the special deal.
Well,
I need to know what that is.
It's somewhat
Mr.
different
Mayor.
on our behalf than it is for other people, which was if we deem something necessary for this parcel, special and unique as it is, providing no tax base to us, we agreed to annex it, but said, look, there are some special problems with it. And if we decide that our best judgment for ways to solve these special problems are going to cost money, then the school district's going to need to pay that money, and that won't necessarily be a negotiation. We will sometimes just dictate to you, here's the solution, pay it. Am I right in that? I think I am.
Well, I'm not sure if that's exactly what it is, but I can talk specifically about Scott brought up the issue about traffic, the flashing lights and the signs. And the school district is planning on paying for those and taking care of those.
All right, well, that was my specific, so I mean, maybe you don't want to be pinned to a broader item there.
But I would like to address the council and make a few comments before you take action or move further, if that would be
Go ahead,
agreeable.
but before you do, let me finish then, because I was just trying to get clarification from you on the idea of the flashing signs and this idea of coordination with the county and with the town of Troy. That I'm not sure that our idea, which obviously we only control just that little bit, but our idea was a certain period of time at which point there'd be flashing signs which will be provided by someone other than the county and someone other than the town of Troy, so that doesn't cost them anything, that could conceivably be placed down south of this school, slow traffic down during a certain period of the day. It could be on the southeast part of Cooley Trail, and then go up into what is our jurisdiction up before that kind of Y intersection there, and flashing lights at those three areas that are going at a certain time to say to people, look, there's a school here, slow down, which I think might be actually safer than any of the other options. But that would require us sort of communicating that forward to the county so that they realize that, hey, these signs are going to be paid for. This is an option for you and for the Troy.
They're going to be paid for by the school district.
By the school district. So it doesn't cost them anything. Now, knowing that, what do you decide to do on this? So that was the comment I have. Now go ahead and tell us
Well, I
what you
just,
think.
I appreciate your consideration here. It is a very difficult to bring four entities together who each have a jurisdiction, but no one has full jurisdiction. And so we have timing issues and so forth when we look at the school opening September 2nd to make sure that we can have a safe situation for our drivers. And we're really not thinking about pedestrian traffic walking to the school. We will be discouraging that, as you've talked about. So I really appreciate your consideration of safety for cars and the occupants of cars and buses around the site, because that's who we're really focusing on. Have you think about a couple things about the varying times that this site will be used, and Scott talked about us talking earlier about this as a school community center that will be used at various times. And so that should be a consideration. Certainly we would support consistent speed limit of 35, but I also understand the consideration and the reasons that you're looking for strategic times. Thinking about that, and we should understand the various times that the site is going to be used, and we are going to have traffic coming to the site. The times that have been selected, certainly we have late start and early release times. We have summer school schedule. We plan on having summer school at this site. School community events will occur with significant traffic coming to the site as well. Staff development and vacation days change the time, and school-age care does as well. So your concept of strategic time periods, I think, is a good one, and one that can be used with the flashing signs. I would hope that you could make a motion at this point to support that and move that forward, and if you need to make that contingent on some action that the county takes, I think that would be agreeable, but would allow this issue to move forward and not be stalled, knowing that school is fast approaching on September 2nd. Really appreciate your consideration of the safety of our students, our staff, our families, and our community members who are going to be traveling County Road F even if they're not coming to the school itself, because the traffic around the school is affected by the actions that you take and how we organize the school as well. I know Tom Holland would also like to address you, our board member, and he's also chair of the Facilities and Grounds Committee.
Well, let me make another attempt to see if we can move this along. Scott, you tried to make a motion. I don't think we really got it done here.
Lee seconded it, but with contingencies.
With contingencies. My ruling was we don't have a motion in a second. Does anyone have a motion here before we hear more? Do we need to hear more before we move ahead?
I'll move that we move forward with the recommendation from the safety committee.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move the recommendation of the safety committee, which was to utilize flashing signs and to have the speed lowered to 35 during the morning and afternoon peak hours.
And I would also like to hear from Tom.
And
I have a
now
question first for
discussion,
Lee.
yes, go ahead.
The issue sheet says only near Rivercrest Elementary School. Where are these flashing signs going to be exactly?
What we discussed in safety was the three locations that Angela pointed out.
Because they're not on this map.
Entering the school zone from the south on County Road F, which the county would have to agree with.
Mhm.
Entering the school zone from north, which would be someplace between, they're suggesting this the 4-lane down to
Mhm.
2-lane, and entering the school zone coming up
Well,
here.
we have no jurisdiction over that.
Right, neither do we have it here.
Right.
These two organizations or would have to agree with us on this proposal.
So that would be, in other words, your motion then would be contingent upon the other two organizations agreeing with us.
Thank you.
Okay.
And can I clarify one thing? May I?
Yes.
We're in discussion. You can say what you wish.
I think it really would be unnecessary to have a flashing light on Cooley Trail since it's that short section where the town of Troy meets up with the city of Hudson.
Well, the
You know,
flashing light that Lee pointed
At
out
Nordic
is in the town of Troy. It's not on our last 200 feet.
This corner,
At Nordic Lane.
that corner,
Oh,
and coming south.
that's not,
Is that what you were thinking?
no.
So this is an
My understanding at
excellent
all.
example of my point that this is not ready for prime time. This is not a fully hatched idea that they've come to us with, and yet they want us to solve their problem.
Well, it isn't fully hatched, Scott, but we're trying our best to work with them and with these other entities, and I think we're on a path here that can work.
And I
What
would
we're
say-
asking, and Lee, you don't, go ahead.
I was gonna say, that was the recommendation that came out of safety. If we wanna make a modification to that at a different location, we can certainly discuss that.
All right, I have no problem with this.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, I'm just saying, Lori seemed to have a problem with it. She
No, I
didn't
didn't
want
have a
the
problem with it.
flashing
I guess I was not clear, actually, from public safety, that we were talking about it being down there.
All
I'm
three,
sorry if I
okay.
misunderstood. But if it's 35 all along Cooley Trail, and the city has jurisdiction over a short section before the stop sign, why not just leave it 35 on Cooley Trail the entire way? Simplify that leg of it,
What about County Road F then?
and then have the flashing lights south of, or by Red Brick, and then north of Cooley Trail.
I think we heard that Cooley Trail is currently 55, is that correct?
Curly Trail is currently 55.
So the
But
question.
the town of
was-
Troy has lowered it, haven't they?
They have requested that, actually, the county has to make the request on their behalf, but they have requested that the speed limit be lowered on
To
Curly
35.
Trail.
And so we're just recommend an alternate solution.
Probably complicated things.
Well, the only thing we would have jurisdiction over would be the one flashing light on County Road F, north of Cooley Trail.
Our suggestion is the placement of 3 at the 3 corners of the triangle, only one of which, the northern light, would actually be in our jurisdiction. The other 2 would need the approval and consent of, I guess, the county for both of them and the town of Troy for one. And whether or not that short chunk of Cooley Trail was 24 hours, 35 miles an hour for 24/7, or whether it was only when the lights are on, I don't think that's a big make or break issue for any of us.
Well, during that 200 feet, you should be braking for the stop sign anyway.
And
So I think the
my
speed
point,
limit's
is
a
that-
moot
That's my
point.
point, is that if the town of Troy was gonna have Cooley Trail be 35 the
Well-
entire way, why not just?
All we'd have to do is have no signage that signaled anything differently, and the last sign they got was Troy's sign saying 35, and they're gonna
Correct.
go 35 to the sign.
So our only concern would be County Road F.
We don't really need to take any action on that,
On the Cooley Trail.
on the Cooley Trail portion. No action on our part will make that 35,
Mhm.
in
Correct.
essence.
So would you amend your motion to reflect that we would, contingent upon the other 2 jurisdictions agreeing to put up their flashing signs, we would put up a flashing sign north of Cooley Trail on County Road F, as you have drawn here on this map, reducing it during those hours, operated by the school, however they time it when it's flashing, that simply has a warning sign ahead of it, will come both north and south saying, you know, reduce speed ahead.
Yes, and then the motion, and then to be contingent on the county agreeing.
And reduce, and that would reduce it to 35 when the lights are flashing. Okay.
Any objection to this proposal to amend the motion?
I just have one, just
Yeah.
on, and I brought it up in public safety. The school recommended at 6 PM because of school care. And I'm wondering if you guys would change yet.
I'd like to hear if Tom has some things to add to this. Can I do that now?
Yep.
Don't have much to add, really. Just would like to, first of all, one thing is just to emphasize, to not think of this as only a school. It really becomes now an activity area, really an all-encompassing activity area, which includes summer as well as winter activities, as we have planned and you've discussed and talked about. So I'd really hope that you'll consider a consistent, permanent reduction of the speed limit for the safety of those that will be traveling on those roads. The second thing, and then I'm done, is that one thing I think is a reality check, is that we know that people go faster than the posted speed limits. As a matter of fact, Federal Highway Administration's conducted a study, has indicated and found that 70% of drivers speed, and of the 70%, 85% of the drivers exceed 10 miles an hour over that posted limit. So if we're posting 35, we're going to have 45 mile an hour travel on those roads. And so my only encouragement, and I guess I would like to also reemphasize my appreciation for your consideration of this, but that we make it consistent, permanent, and a minimum of 35 miles an hour.
Any further discussion?
Could we ask
Yeah.
Madam Clerk to read back the?
Yeah, so the, okay.
I don't really have good wording on all the discussion that you had over there about amending to reflect it's contingent on the counting agreeing to the change
Well,
and flashing lights.
let me help you out here a little bit.
Okay.
This came up earlier in our meeting. I mean, the idea of doing friendly amendments to the motion that we've already got, I mean, it can work out really good when it's a very simple thing. The more complex it gets, the more you run into trouble. So, the amendment that you proposed, can you say it again for her so that Nancy can write it down?
Yes, that we go with the committee recommendation, and we had discussed earlier another contingency, contingent upon any improvements in materials and construction being paid for by the school district. Also contingent upon approval of the same flashing speed indicators on the part of town of Troy and St. Croix County, who are the two other entities that have jurisdiction here.
All right. And Lee, you're seconding his amendment?
Yes, that's fine.
Is there any objection to the amendment? All right, so we've got an amended motion here, and we've been discussing it. Any questions, Pam? what do you think about this?
Times, are we including times, or are you going to go with the times that were recommended by the safety committee? There was some input about childcare and.
Yeah, Randy, you mentioned 6 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock.
The
It's
school
5 o'clock.
district
in
at
the-
Public Safety suggested 6 because of school, after-school care.
But you know what? It's, before school care starts at 6 a.m. You know, I think what we have to realize is those extreme ends, and I mean, I live by EP Rock. I see how many parents come during those times. It's a kind of a slow stream. So if you want to cover both extremes, then you're going to start at 6 a.m. And you're going to just be covering a lot of commuters who are.
I'm just asking if
trying
you
to get on
guys
the
are willing to
interstate.
change your minds yet.
Well, I mean, I think it's
Not a
consistent
make or
in
break,
that.
I'll support it somehow.
I have one question for Tom. I think it would come under your jurisdiction. As the school gets into operation, they're going to recognize more fully what the peak hours are, what the traffic movements are, you know, what's the volume at 6 a.m., what's the volume at 6 p.m. What's the process we would go through if we decide that those times need to be changed? Can anybody answer that?
Okay. Did you have
I
something,
have something
David?
to offer. Randy was looking for some common sense ideas. I travel that area twice a week. Come down Cooley and right on Coney F. And in my 2002 Taurus, it's hard to go 45 miles an hour through the dog track bridges. And I can offer that the school buses aren't going to be able to maintain 35, you know, in the area directly north of what we're looking at. So you may want to make some consideration, you know, not just, you know, look at the bigger picture, you know, more of Carmichael Road, right? I'd suggest that you drive the area and try to maintain the speed limits. It is challenging in a vehicle, and it'd be even more challenging in a school bus. So school bus traffic will definitely slow people's driving through that area.
But presumably those school buses, for the most part, aren't going to be coming from, how many are coming from the north? Well, it's a subtle point, but I guess what I'd mention is it is in our city code. Carmichael is outlined. There are
Right,
some specific roads that
we're
are
gonna have some
designated. It's
ordinance
designated
amendments.
45, so you would be looking at changing the ordinance.
Well, the school ought to be telling us the answer to your question, Lori, because they were able to tell people which children are coming from where. These people operate schools, and why they're not telling us, this is when school children arrive, this is the peak, this is what percentage comes when, this is where they're coming from. They know all this stuff. Why are they not telling us? I mean, that's why I'm saying, I felt this very poorly prepared.
That was completely outlined in the traffic study completed by Bonus Drill February 9th, 2006, and was presented to the city council and reviewed at that time, and that was all part of that traffic study. A complete traffic study has been completed.
Yeah, I would just say I had to dig for that. It would be helpful if that had been part of this discussion, because some of us were not here in 2006, and so it has been a difficult issue to follow.
What was your point about the ordinance, though? The ordinance?
The ordinance, go ahead.
Speed limits are
Carmichael's
in ordinance.
Are in the ordinance, and they're going to need to be able to have an ordinance that's enforceable. Can't be changing as the school district changes its schedule. I mean, this flashing lights, I do have some concern about changing it repeatedly. It's right now at 45 from.
Well, basically because at the time this was written, that wasn't in there.
From that property line up to Mayor Road. And so that'll just have to be changed.
Yeah.
You can still approve what speed limit you want,
Right.
but we'll have to bring an ordinance back to change it. But when we're talking about adjusting these flashing lights to accommodate varying schedules,
I think though they're
that
saying
concerns me.
I think they're saying specifically these times though. So that
I
could
also-
be written.
Another,
That can be written in. The other is more difficult.
Another clarification to the motion. I know Lori had mentioned that this would just remain, that there would be no flashing light here. It'd just remain 35 constant in this area. But you're talking, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page of that. Is this going to be a consistent 35, or are you looking for flashing?
3 flashing lights.
Okay,
That's the
no,
motion.
I just wanted to make sure I had heard two different.
It's 3 flashing lights.
If Troy and the county decided to make it 24/7, that'd be fine. What we're going to say is the lights are still going to flash during the peak hours. We won't have anything to say about whether they lower the speed limit on the part that they control 24/7. All right, further discussion. Let me just, because this has come up a couple of times, let me just tell you the way that, from a parliamentary procedure standpoint, the way that I would do this. The two of you seem to be in favor of changing the hours. There's a motion under discussion. Either one of you can make a motion to amend it at any time. If the other one seconds it, there will be a vote. If you don't have the votes to make that change, it won't be changed, and we'll vote on the original thing. So if you both bring it up during discussion and let it drop, then it dropped. But just for sort of point of clarification, that's how I would handle that.
I think Lee wanted to hear if that was something the school district wanted or no.
No, what I wanted to hear is that, do we have a process in place for revisiting, as this school gets into operation, there'll be, I think, a reality check as far as how well these time zones are working.
And that's where we run into ordinance problems, so if
Well,
we set
then
it,
you'd
we set
have
it.
to change the ordinance again.
Yep.
So the times that actually be in the ordinance.
Yes, because in order to write out a citation, they've got to have an ordinance, a law that someone's violating.
Yep.
Can the ordinance not reflect something to the effect of unless otherwise
Flashing
posted?
lights or.
Unless otherwise posted? And
But are
posting
is
would
the-
be the lights flashing, saying,
Well,
worrisome about
be better
that.
off to have it
It's
certain.
specific.
Yeah.
If the flashing lights aren't working, or I don't know that that's enforceable without some specific language.
How do you enforce the other methodology which says when children are present? I mean, there has to be a way to enforce that.
Well, that tells you if there's a child present and you're driving at 35 when you're supposed to be at 15, and the officer sees you and sees the child, the citation's written out.
Well, here it would be the officer would have to see you and see the lights flashing. I mean, it wouldn't really be any different.
If I may add, I don't think we have the ability to abrogate to the school district setting speed limits in the city of Hudson. That's our responsibility only. So we would have to set the speed limits and the hours that the lights would be flashing.
Yeah, I still maintain, I mean, I accept the fact that people speed, but I think that most drivers drive the speed that they feel safe at the time. David's point really was that because of the curve, because of bumps and a bridge, I think that was your point, David, that it's hard to drive as fast as the speed limit is. Hence, drivers are actually self-regulating themselves down. And I think the point here is that if drivers become aware there's a school there, I mean, they will slow down. I mean, that's my impression. And so part of it is what makes them more aware of a school? A speed limit sign that says 35 or a flashing light that says, you know, it's a school district and slow yourself down. I think we're ready to vote on this. I hear no further discussion. Is there any? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, where does that leave us? I believe we might be at unfinished business, number B. Consider hiring a consultant to verify the findings of the Ad hoc Facilities Committee report and proceed with facility layout recommendations and cost estimates. This item came from Lee Weiland.
Our ad hoc, yep.
Ad hoc committee. What are you suggesting, Lee?
Well, you did a good job, Rita. Basically exactly this, the chief's got, the work that we do with the chiefs to say, yes, we have issues, we would like to take it a step further there are some experts in the field, a couple of them are already known to the chiefs, that will come in, do a verification of what we've put together of an analysis, and then can take it a step further and say, based on their agreement or disagreement with our recommendations, they would follow through with facility layout or location layout, or basically to bring somebody in to say, yes, we believe this is the direction you need to go, and to help us take that next step.
Lee, I'd like to make a motion that's a little bit different, just slightly changing a word. We have here, consider hiring a consultant. I would like to make a motion that we consider, that we do authorize Lee's ad hoc committee to send out RFPs, requests for proposals from consultants, giving us the cost and timelines to verify the findings.
I think that's an excellent change, and that's what we're looking for, is the RFP. Get us a set of proposals from different firms as far as what they would charge to come in and do this work.
Can I take that as a second?
Before you do, well, sure, you can take it as a second. The ad hoc committee is finished.
So it would be the finance committee that
It would
send
be
out
the
RFP.
finance committee.
I'll amend my motion then, that we authorize finance to send out RFPs.
I have some question of whether we should do facility layout before, I mean, that might be getting the cart before the horse, because there could be site-specific things that change the way that a facility might be laid out. In other words, you've done a lot of work to create a building, you don't know where it's going to be, and then when you site it on the site, I mean, look at what happened to them with this site. If that had been a pre-built school, it never would have worked on this triangular site that they ended up on. Other than that, I have no objection to it.
So the RFP would include, I guess what I was looking for was the RFP to include a couple of different phases.
Yeah.
And what they would charge for each phase.
Are we looking to go to architects? Are we looking to go to consulting firms? Are we?
We're thinking about, there are some safety consulting firms out there that specialize in facilities.
Okay.
So our motion here is to authorize the Finance Committee to do RFPs, to retain a consultant to verify the findings of the Ad hoc Facilities Committee, and to proceed with recommendations and cost estimates. Does that seem right?
Correct.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Let's move on. I think that puts us down to new business. First item of new business was consider awarding contract proceeding with 2008 sidewalk curb and gutter replacement project and a resolution on this. I believe with all the changes, I think maybe we heard that we have to rebid. This item has to be postponed. With that, that takes B. We've got just a couple more left. Consider possible changes to municipal code regarding outstanding debt owed to the city and to authorize city attorney to review and draft an ordinance. This is an item that was requested by Mr. O'Malley. Scott, do you have something in mind here? You want to tell us what you've got in mind?
Yes, it's exactly what we've done with Resolution 3-08 and Resolution 5-08 in the past couple of months, which is that those persons in what we've already passed is those persons applying for alcohol beverage licenses, those persons applying for direct sellers licenses, have to make sure that they're current in their payments to the city, that they can't owe us back taxes before they ask us to incur the services of our staff to investigate their applications. We've already done that, and I'm asking tonight, I'm moving, my motion is that we authorize Catherine, our city attorney, to investigate doing the same exact thing to those ordinances having to do with issuance of conditional use permits, variances from ordinances, or changes to conditional use permits. Basically, if you wish, and if any party wishes to use up city resources and staff time, please pay your bill to pay for that resource and staff time. It's exactly what we've already passed for direct sellers and for liquor licenses.
So are you essentially moving the item as it was noticed here to authorize the city attorney to review and draft an ordinance covering this item? That's your motion?
Yes, it is.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Can I ask you a question, Scott, in regards to any individual, let's say a renter or whatnot, that does not apply to them? If they want to have a job that requires a liquor license, operator's license?
Absolutely.
Well, that's not what I'm asking tonight. That's already been passed. This council has already enacted that ordinance.
Right, what?
I'm not asking for that. I'm just simply saying we use the exact same principle to any party, any petitioner who comes before the council or comes to City Hall and says, I want a conditional use permit. Or a building permit, or a variance from an ordinance. You can submit your petition and submit your paperwork. We can't stop that. That's free speech.
So you're asking?
I'm asking simply that we authorize Catherine to spend a little time investigating this and drafting the same kind of change.
But you're saying a deck, somebody want to build a deck, if they owe back taxes, they can't without paying up?
If it's if they need a conditional use permit, yeah.
They need a building permit.
Anything, just, if you're going to ask for city resources in terms of staff time and energy, please pay your tax bill that we need in order to pay that staff.
Every citizen is what, not just business.
Right. Every citizen, any petitioner.
Water bill, if their water bill is late, if they haven't paid their water bill, they shouldn't be able to get would you envision that, or is it?
There's some limitations, on the Public Utilities Commission has some limitations on shutting off water or, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And there might be some other, like you mentioned, building permit. If someone submits an application that meets all the requirements of the building code, I'm not sure that you can deny them a building permit, and they pay the fee for the building permit. What I've seen, and I did a little bit of looking into this just when it came up, so I'd give you some idea of what the issues might be and what some other, at least one city is doing. Sussex has a blanket ordinance that says no initial or renewal license permit, variance they cover the gamut, or any other discretionary action of the governing body or any of its boards shall be allowed unless they've paid all these bills. I think the idea there is that if you submit an application for a permit that's like a building permit, that you've done everything you need to do, it meets all the requirements of the code, you're probably entitled to that building permit. I ran it by the League of Cities. They thought there might be some issues in some recent case law on variances and conditional use permits. I have not looked at those yet. In general, some cities are using this, having a blanket type ordinance, and in most cases it may work. There may be some of these types of permits where it's a little different, or different issues might apply, and that's what I would look into.
Well, I think it's a good idea. I think the other area that we have to look at is how much staff work are we gonna, somebody comes in for a dog license. Are we gonna check real estate taxes? Are we gonna check water department? How long is it gonna take for them to look at that? So.
That's another situation where you want that dog licensed. They come in and they pay their fee that's required by statute. That's a situation where it wouldn't, I don't think, make sense to say, no, you can't license your dog, because you're putting them in violation of the licensing requirement. This is a application to receive something from the city that the city isn't necessarily required to give, like a variance.
Okay.
So dog licenses, there's, some licenses, obviously you want them to.
The only thing you receive is the tag.
Well, I think the issue is, how much work is it gonna take for the city staff?
But, yeah, issues
Well,
is
that should be an issue.
That exactly is my point.
Yep.
It doesn't eat up any city resources to issue a dog tag.
Right.
But to go over plans for a conditional use permit
yeah.
or a variance, it takes time.
That's
Then he's
a
here.
little bit different issue. That's what the application fee is supposed to cover. What this ordinance will say is, you have to have paid up any delinquent taxes, bills you have from the city in order to get that variance. And you're paying the application fee at the same time.
Well, the one thing that could help the city staff is if all of our applications have some kind of notification around the application that says, if your fees or whatever, and we rely on Kathy to come up with that language, but you got to give them a notification when they take that application out, that we don't notify them afterwards. We got to notify them right up front, and we can modify our applications to do so. But that's somewhat of a fairness issue to them, that they're notified up front that is an issue for the city of Hudson. So something I would suggest giving consideration to.
Thank you.
Well,
Can I ask this, why? Why are you doing this?
Because at a time when the city is so strapped for money, and we've spent a lot of time tonight talking about trying to get funding for different projects, but specifically for public works tonight, I find it would be very difficult to be giving up time, city resources, we're paying staff members to work on petitions that would come from somebody who hasn't paid their share of that staff person's time.
Which is addressed through the permitted fees?
Yeah, it has to do exactly with the two ordinances we've already amended, we've already changed with resolutions. It's exactly the same principle.
It just feels like you're picking on the little guy, that's just.
I'm not picking on the little guy, I'm picking on people who don't pay their taxes.
well, which sometimes is a little guy.
Yeah.
You know, as I said the last time we discussed this, I guess it must have been the night that we did the direct seller amendment. Just from the standpoint of, I think what I said was the libertarian in me is a little bothered by this. I mean, it feels like a giant power grab, and it's hard to argue with the logic of it. But I would just say, if you start from the standpoint of people ought to have, as we just celebrated 2 days ago, the maximum liberty they can have consistent with the health and safety and welfare of everyone around them, then as you consider an application for them to do something with their property, for example, if the only thing holding them back is some water bill or something that didn't get paid, it seems just ripe to a court challenge. I'm not surprised that the league says there might be some challenges here. It seems like there would be a fairness issue in why you'd be denied just on that basis. But, I mean, it's in your court.
Well, the council has already settled that question twice.
Well,
and so I would say that that's in our past, and I'm just trying to extend this fairness to the entire city.
And the previous ones we talked about were business-oriented, correct?
Yes, and
Let
if
me
you want this,
I'll explain the previous ones. The liquor statutes state statutes allow a city to refuse a liquor license if either the premises or the applicant is delinquent in taxes. That's a function of state law. Applying it to the other business permits is also a function of how that statute has been interpreted, in that the courts have said, well, if you're going to apply it to liquor, you've got to apply it consistently to other permits within the city. My interpretation of that, well, is liquor is a business, license to operate a business. So in order to be consistent with state law, I amended the ordinances or proposed the amendment to other business type licenses or permits. And then the discussion came up about, zoning, conditional use, all that. But it started with something that's authorized under the liquor statutes. So in my view, the city didn't have the council didn't have the discussion on whether to apply it, for all the permits that might be available from the city.
well, if, Catherine, what you're saying is that this should be something confined to businesses, then that's, these are the answers I'm asking the council to ask you to give us.
Yeah.
That's all the authorization I'm asking for, is for you to give us these answers.
I'm not saying that right now. That was the parameters within which I was working.
But it's okay if that's, and to answer Randy's objection, if it turns out that that's the way it should be, then that's the way it should be. I'm asking the council to authorize you to tell us these
To look into
answers.
it.
Yeah, look into it. That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
Call for the
Technically, by code, I mean, what our council procedures are is in items like this for new business, they would come before the council, have a reading, and typically be referred to one of our committees. That is that's probably rarely followed, but I mean, that is an option at least, would be to say, now, this seemed like such a simple item.
I thought so.
Well, I think what you're talking about are ordinances. I mean, you have what Scott is asking is, does the council think it's an issue that they're interested enough in having the legal issues figured out in order to prepare an ordinance?
Yeah.
Yes, so I won't prepare an ordinance, I'll come back and say, no, it's really dicey, stick with what you've got, or
Yep.
What the parameters are.
In a second. All right, we have a motion and a second already.
So you said you've only run across one instance?
What I did, I just put it out on the city attorney's listserv, and one community contacted me. So I can't say that I didn't do any kind of I just wanted to get a read on, is this something someone else has done before?
Okay.
What's your legal opinion now, while you're on the clock?
I haven't spent,
Not
it's
gonna
kind
get
of like
it.
getting a date from the manufacturer.
I'm trying to save money.
I haven't spent any time on it. I've given you.
Just trying to save some money.
No, it won't be
it's never
worth
gonna-
anything.
Call for the question.
Yeah, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Okay, motion carries 5-1. Last item, consider request of Ryan and Krista Doyle for easement agreement to construct a fence at 70 Canary Way. Mr. David Gray.
Good evening. Ryan and Krista Doyle of 70 Canary Way wishes to erect a fence partially within a storm sewer easement. The property does have a storm sewer running along the east and south property lines with two catch basins on the rear property line. The fence will not interfere with drainage to those catch basins, and it will not interfere with access to those catch basins. So the city staff is recommending approval since the Doyles are willing to sign an easement agreement.
I move to approve on staff recommendation.
Thank
We
you.
got a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation. Are there any questions?
Easement agreement always carries with it the proviso that any improvements or any changes are at their expense.
Correct. Then also the agreement is filed at the Register of Deeds office.
Thank you, David.
I think we went through this once before. Do these always have to come to Common Council?
The practice has been, and I'm glad you brought that up, Lori. The practice has been that these automatically go on as new business. And there is no precedent for them going through a committee and having discussion at the committee and then coming here as a consent agenda item. But I question whether that could be changed in our practice. Do you have a suggestion?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, let's hear it.
I guess my suggestion would be that these easement agreements go through planning first, if that's a logical, is that the logical place for it to go? And that they then come to Common Council, and I think most likely they could be on the consent agenda.
Denny may want to comment, but I would probably recommend maybe going to Public Works. It seems like they have a tendency to relate to Public Works more than planning.
Okay.
Well, we'll work that out, and as I prepare future agendas, as these come forward, we'll decide where to send it. What did you find, City Attorney, on the question of where items of new business should be done?
Ordinances, resolutions, communications, and other matters submitted to council shall be read by title and author and referred to the appropriate committee by the mayor without motion unless objected to by a council member. Do we have a title and author on, I guess?
Well, in this case, the title would have been Consider Possible Changes to Municipal Code, and the author would have been Scott. And if I followed our code, I would have immediately referred it to the Finance Committee to talk about this, and that would have been it. Unless somebody here objected and said, let's deal with it right now.
My only concern on that, and the reason I raised it, is you can have, if there are legal issues involved in something, without any direction on that before it goes to committee, there can be a lot of spinning in wheels and time spent either unnecessarily or certainly unproductively, and we come back with a recommendation that really isn't helpful.
I do agree with that, but I'll just make this point, and I didn't bring that up until I felt like we were already spinning our wheels. And that maybe it needed to go to a committee for further work, so.
Well, it certainly can do that. I'm just, just when there's legal issues involved, I just think it's helped to get direction early on.
All right.
If the council's even interested in having an ordinance along those lines.
I think we've finished our agenda items up to number 11, communications recommendations of the mayor.
Did we?
Oh, did we not vote on that?
No.
Oh, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. I'd just like to say the Booster Club did a fantastic job again. Had a good event with Booster Days, and we need to support them in every way that we can because they're a very special organization that does a lot for the city. Any comments? Let's see where we're at. Communications items for future agendas, any alderperson. Lori?
No.
Pam? None. City Attorney? Devin?
I put an update on your table this evening Just with some ongoing items, just to update you where we're on them. If you want, I can do this on a regular basis.
Please do.
You know, that way you guys have an idea of what's going on. If there's any questions on anything, just let me know, contact me, and I can get answers for you.
Could I go back and give you a brief update on the library board without going into too much depth?
Yeah, not much depth because it's not on.
At our
the-
next meeting or before, I will distribute to you our working draft document of where we're at with it, which I thought I'd have by tonight from this morning's 6:30 a.m. meeting, but I didn't, it wasn't prepared in time for tonight's.
Might you have that to the library board for their meeting next Monday, or not?
It was supposed to be out today, so I'm certain it'll be out tomorrow.
Okay, I mean, my point was, would you give it to the library board before giving it to the full council?
Yes.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
Oh.